Good evening, everybody. June 13th, 2022 meeting. Looks like we have a huge agenda. I understand Cindy Spoljaric is in the sky?
Yes, she is.
Okay,
She's in the
very
sky,
good.
and we do not have Joe Edwards with us.
Joe is not with us. Okay. Well, let's,
He's in a boat.
he what?
He's in a boat.
He's in his Minnesota boat?
Yes.
Boat? Yeah, boat. It's that time of year. He always does it. That's great. We'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. I see Rob is here. Griebenstraub is with us again. We'll have our invocation following the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Father, we love you, and I thank you tonight for an opportunity to come before you personally, but also corporately as well as part of the city that you founded, have shaped, and continue to shape today and in the days to come. Lord, your word is clear that you do all things well. And Lord, we have seen throughout history how your hand has moved in and about our city, and as you shaped it and its people, year after year, week after week, month after month. And Father, tonight is another step forward in how the city is shaped and led ahead. Tonight I ask your Holy Spirit to speak to us, to shape us, to guide us, to counsel us in how to take that next step forward in a variety of ways, and manners and circumstances. Father, as we do that, we seek your best. We seek your best for Westfield and for each individual involved, each family, each couple, each person here dwelling in our city limits and beyond also. Father, I pray tonight that the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts would be pleasing to you. And if they're not there quite yet, Lord, help get them there quickly and keep them there during our time together tonight. We thank you so much for the privilege of coming together in prayer and coming before you with the opportunities before us tonight. Lord, show us your hand at work and continue to do all things well and show us your best. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Rob, thank you very much. Mr. Johns, do you care to conduct the meeting tonight?
Thank you, Mayor Cook. Cindy, would you note the presence of a quorum, please?
Troy Patton,
Here.
Mike Johns,
Here.
Jake Gilbert,
Here.
Scott Fry,
Here.
and Scott Willis.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Cindy Spoljaric, did you?
I'm here, Cindy
Oh.
Spoljaric.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Changes to the agenda. If any of you had seen an earlier agenda, one item was removed from that, and that was the, under new business, ordinance 22-27, the water sound PUD has been removed for this evening. First item then on the agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes from our May 23rd, 2022 meeting. Councilors, do I have any additions, deletions, changes to those minutes? Can I have a motion then to approve the minutes of May 23rd?
I move to approve the minutes for May 23rd.
Do I have a second? Motion made by Jake Gilbert, seconded by Troy Patton. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spoljaric,
Yes,
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next item is the approval of the claims docket for June 13th, 2022. Councilors, do you have any questions regarding the claims docket? Cindy, I know you did. Did you have those adequately answered?
I did, thank you.
Okay. Hearing no other questions, do I have a motion to approve the claims docket?
Motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Troy Patton, seconded by Scott Willis. Cindy, would you please call the roll?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Cindy Spalcherik.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right. Moving along, then, we've got several presentations this evening. So first presentation is an update from the fire department on the increasing demand for EMS and fire services. And we're going to have Chief Rob Gaylor explain what's happening.
Members of the council, thank you, Rob Gaylor, Westfield Fire Department. A couple things real quick. I'm sorry that Councilman Edwards isn't here. We're going to take a stroll down memory lane. As we know, Westfield's growing at a rapid pace. Along with growth comes some challenges. A lot of that is sometimes keeping up with industry standards. Fire department's not any different than any other organization or department within the city. We face the same things, and quite frankly, we should be considered part of the infrastructure. The challenge is to find the balance between what is needed and what the capabilities to fulfill those needs are. The fire department provides services to 56 square miles. Sometimes that's often overlooked because we encompass Westfield, Washington Township. That's a service that we provided from day one. So people that live inside the township need to count towards our population as far as things that we serve. So here's some good things that our folks have accomplished. In 2022, at the end of the year, our roster is going to be up to 85. We're going to run out of 3 fire stations. In 2021, we responded on 4,440 calls. Of that, 3,051 of those were for medical. 70%, which is the national standard, is right where we fall in our services rendered. Right now, from 2021 to 22, we're seeing about a 10 to 12% increase in call volume, which has really been our trend since when I started in 2007, is to see a steady increase in calls. As of June 1st, we're at 1,905 calls and 3,984 apparatus responses. Our average turnout time, this is where I'm really proud of the men and women in the organization, but the average turnout time is 1 minute and 26 seconds. They're catching another run. They're catching another. This is number 16 or 17 for today for our organization, and they've only been on duty for 12 hours. It's kind of a lot. We've given aid 114 times. We received aid 155 times. And again, these stats are from June 1st. We've had 28 fires this year with a value of $8.4 million assessed value on that property with a loss of $313,000. If you guys are number crunchers, that's 9,600% to the positive. So our folks are really good at what they do. We hire very good people, and they know their job. Yes, sir. So given aid, some of our runs fall on a boundary or a border, and one station may be closer than another station, and that may fall outside of our jurisdiction. So we may help Noblesville out up around Station 3, Anthony Road, 38, and they reciprocate that. The challenge with that is we have 2 medic units, and just today we've had, as of 11 o'clock this morning, I've not checked, I've been out of the office teaching over in Noblesville, but as of 11 o'clock this morning, we had 3 medic units in our city that were not ours, and 1 engine from another jurisdiction. So that's that mutual aid boundary, and it's because our folks were busy taking care of people. So that's that aid given, aid received thing. We reciprocate that as much as we can, but as we continue to grow and get busy, our units are tied up on calls. We're going to rely heavily or more heavily than we already do on those other agencies to render that aid. So as you can see, just back from 2015, and we can go back, I've got data from 2004 when I started. But just a steady increase, a climb in our current call volume. We took a look at it and thought from 2020, 2021, such a huge increase, it had to be COVID related, right? I mean, that's kind of what our initial reaction was, but in reality, it's not. We were doing boosters, we were doing vaccinations and doing a lot of those things. However, today, what you see is we're up about 12% on calls compared to this time last year, and we're not doing those. We're not running around giving vaccines or boosters or anything like that. These are real calls. So as much as I would like to tell you that I'm padding the stats, I'm not. This is work that our folks are doing. So if we continue the trend, whether we pick a 5% growth or a 10% growth, you can kind of see in the next 8 years where we may fall. 10% growth, we're looking at over 10,000 calls, almost 10.5. At a 5% growth rate, we're looking at 6,887, so 7,000 calls. So that's literally double what we did last year, almost. And so we just need to have an awareness of that. We'll start there. Right here, this is just over the years from 2018 up until 2022. Again, June 1st, how many times we've had a different medic unit in our city rendering aid to our folks. Right now this year, at that time, when I pulled this data, was 170 times, which puts us more than one a day. You can see last year we were at 310. That was almost every day. This year we're going to be about 400 is about where we're at. So there are a couple other things that I get to brag about our organization. A lot of you folks may not even know, but the Insurance Services Organization or office provides a fire rating based on the fire department that has to do with your property taxes or your insurance premiums. And 50% of that is based on the equipment in the station and the stuff that the fire department folks do. 40% is based on water supply, 10% is based on our emergency communication system, and 5.5% is based on some other projects in the community that we do, community risk reduction, education, some things like that. 2018, we did very well. We moved from a 4.6 in the city, depending on where you were at and how close you were to a hydrant, to in the township a 9.10. That's what we were in 2018. Today, we're a 2.2x. So what does that mean? Is we've done a lot of hard work to get where we're at, and a 1 is the best that you can get, and we're a 2. So we get to brag about that. It affects your, again, it affects your insurance premiums. The better we are, the better rate you get. The closer you live to a fire hydrant, the closer you live to a fire station, the better your insurance rates are. There's a couple things if we wanted to achieve to get to the number 1. Some things are out of our control, the water supply, emergency communication system, things like that, it comes and goes. But there's a few things that we scored a 3.87 out of a 10 on, and that was the number of stations and the number of personnel and where we're located throughout the city. So that's one thing that we can control that we really haven't had the opportunity to do yet. That can help us get closer, inch closer to getting that number 1 rating. And this is a national standard, not just here in Indiana. And there's only like 2 or 3 number 1, ISO rated 1 departments in the state. None of them here in Hamilton County. We were the first 2 in Hamilton County to my knowledge. So our folks have done really, really good. There's also some other things out there. National standard, National Fire Protection Agency 1710 is a standard that sets what we should have on our apparatus, including personnel. Establishes our response time or standards that we need to get out the door, how many units we need to have on scene to mitigate a fire incident, a high-rise, a commercial box, whatever that is. These are national standards, and I can tell you right now today in front of you that we fall below the national standard. National standard is 4 people on an engine or an apparatus. We run with 3. National standard is 2 paramedics on a medic unit. We run with 1. National standard is a battalion chief's aide with a battalion. We run with 1 battalion chief and no aide. There's also some time constraints in there. We talk about rendering aid or providing a service to our community, an 8-minute response time, 4-minute on-scene time, things like that. It's all listed in the standard. Some of these things we do really well. Some of them we're just kind of borderline and on the bubble, but we have room for improvement. Why is it important? There are studies done, college level academia papers written all over the country, whether you're an IAFF affiliate or not. The data is out there. Essentially what it shows is NFPA 1710 has found that if there are 5 people on an engine company, their efficiency rating is 100% on charging a line and getting it in service, locating and rescuing victims. 5 people on a ladder or 5 people on a second engine, again, we achieve that 100% efficiency rating. The standard calls for 4. You can see on the screen where you fall based on your duties on the fire scene, where we would fall if we had 4 people all the time on those pieces of equipment, and where we fall today with 3 at our current minimum staffing levels. So there's a significant change, in my opinion, in what we're allowed to provide or have the ability to provide with our current staffing. The other thing is why it's important is our cardiac survivability. When someone's having a heart attack, if we can get there in a much quicker sense based on proximity, location, and things like that, the number of fire stations that we have, obviously time is heart muscle. And the quicker we can get there and apply drugs and electricity, our survivability rate increases 7-fold almost every minute. So here's a couple things. Firefighter responding within 4 minutes after receiving an alarm to initiate CPR, the probability of survivability quadruples from 4.6% to 18.2. So these aren't made up. These are national recognized numbers. AHA, teach CPR. This data is right there. Again, if we have those firefighters are trained and equipped as paramedics, the survival rate increases to 34.3%. Again, right there's your nearly 7-fold increase. The great thing about our organization is we like to be in the know and do a lot of studies and challenge ourselves to be better. In 2007, we completed a GIS study. In 2007, that GIS study identified locations where we should put firehouses. And in a 20-year build-out, it suggested that we were going to be about 10 fire stations and where those were going to be approximately located throughout the city and the township. Now, the caveat to that is that's at build-out, right? We're not necessarily at build-out. I'm not saying that we need 7 or 8 other fire stations, but I can tell you that we definitely need more than we have today. Study also mentions 1710 and 4 people per apparatus and a battalion chief's aide and 2 paramedics on a medic unit and things like that. Again, it's all out of the national standard. It's not anything that we didn't already know, but this is a third party coming in telling us, hey, here you go, and we identified that in 2007. So here's the approximate locations. The red dots, at this time it was before Station 3. The red dots, as you see here and here, that's Station 2, there's Station 1, and the blue dots are the approximations of where the other station should be based on the information at that time. Doesn't give us any idea on when we should add a station here or in what location should come up first. Quite frankly, we're not a per capita organization. That's not how we figure how many fire stations we need or how many firefighters we need. We're a risk mitigation business. So we identify the risk and the problem areas, and that's how we say, hey, we need to provide aid here. We also look at unit hour utilization or response reliability. What that means is, for instance, we really need to be hot and heavy about adding a 3rd medic unit in service. Because at any one given time, Station 2, down on our border, runs to 14751 Cary Road, pulls that medic unit out. Typical call, they're out for an hour, and like today, they're on run number 16 or run number 17. A typical call for that medic unit is going to take them about an hour. So we have Medic 1 covering our whole district. What's the response reliability of Medic 2? Well, they're busy on a call. They're not going to be able to make the next one in their district. So it's going to rely on an outside agency, mutual aid, automatic aid, or pulling from another district. Again, today, we've had 3 medic units from other jurisdictions in our city, today alone, because our guys and gals are out there doing work. Response reliability is much more important than per capita. I have data. How do we compare versus our other neighbors here in the county? I know we don't like to compare, but it's the only thing we have. We got to know where people were at in and around us so we can have some kind of concept to know what we need to strive for or better. So in 2013, when the Fishers Fire Department did 4,374 calls, they had 105 personnel. They built Station 6. 2010, the population was 76,794. Carmel, 2007, this is as far back as I can get their data. 4,886 calls, 142 merit personnel. That doesn't include their civilian staff, which is another 20 or 30. 6 stations, a population of 79,000 people. Noblesville, 2010. This is probably closer to home and what we can more relate to. 4,570 calls, 114 people on a shift. That doesn't include their administration or their civilian staff. 7 stations, population of 51,969. Literally double our size. Today, Noblesville Fire Department has 140 on the suppression side. We're at 85 at 3 fire stations. You look at population estimates, if you want to do a per capita number, you can. I'm just telling you that's not how we operate, but let's take a look at it. Here's the data set where I pulled this information. It's hard to tell if this includes the township or just the city. It's very hard to find. But in this number, 2020, 46,145. Anything that you read now puts us above 50,000, somewhere between 50 and 52. You're going to hear Mr. Ernest give up here and talk about rooftops as they come into our community. Those of you that sat in that presentation earlier in the month recognize that he's going to talk about 13,800 plus units, single family and multifamily units that are coming into our city, even if we don't approve another permit. These things that have already been permitted, allowed to be built, that are coming in the next 6.5 years. Firefighter math, 2 people per, that's another 28 to 30,000 people coming to our city with a population of 50,000. That puts us at 80,000 people if we don't approve another permit from now and the next 6.5 years. I'm telling you as a fire chief standing in front of you, we are not going to be able to provide the service today that we provide today when that time comes. We're going to be busy and you're going to be getting aid from somewhere else. That's a reality. It's not that we don't want to. We'd love to help our citizens, but we're busy and someone else is going to have to pick up our slack. Just comparing us to look at other people throughout, or other cities throughout the state. There was a conversation that was held just a few months ago or a few sessions back, and one of the council members mentioned Maryville's a big city. The population of Maryville is 36,000. We're bigger than Maryville is today. But Maryville has 4 stations and a headquarters. Marion Fire Department has 5 stations. Jeffersonville's at 5. Carmel's at 6. They're talking about Station 7. Noblesville's currently at 7. Lafayette's at 8. Richmond is at 5. Kokomo's at 6. Muncie's at 7. The list goes on and on. Be happy to entertain any questions.
What technology are we using? I mean, just there's all kinds of technology, right? I mean, are we up to date with the most technology that we can possibly have? I mean, because I look at cities like Muncie, Anderson. I mean, I'm from Muncie, and there's like half the people there that there used to be.
So in all fairness, the 7 stations were probably serving twice as many people. There's just not that many. I mean, Delaware County's rough, right, except for Ball
I
State.
acknowledge that.
Okay.
No, Ball State is too, right?
Ball State's awesome, actually. They
Right.
did a good job. Okay, anyways, I'm just saying, what technology can we use as a city to improve our response times and that sort of thing?
I will say, working and being here in Hamilton County is the greatest place that we can be. Our technology is state-of-the-art. We have everything from automatic vehicle location to closest unit dispatch to anything that you can think of imaginable, we have here in the county.
Okay, so we
Technology-wise,
have everything we need?
we're there.
Okay,
We're good technology-wise. It's the boots on the ground. It's the apparatus. It's the stations. Those are the things to cover 56 square miles. It's not cornfields anymore. Let's just be honest, right? It's not cornfields. In 2004, we did 1,771 calls. We had 12 people assigned to a shift. I would come in, I would throw my boots on the floor. If it was a fire call, I'd take a fire truck. If it was an EMS call, I'd take an EMS truck. If it was a car crash, I would take a rescue. We're not that agency today. You guys don't expect that service. You expect us to bat 1,000, and we do the 4,500, 5,000 times out the door that we go. But as this keeps going, you're going to be getting services from Carmel. You're going to be getting services from Sheridan. You're going to be getting services from Noblesville, from Zionsville.
yeah.
It just, it's gonna spiral. Sheridan Fire Department right now is retiring a paramedic. They've got a hiring process going. They're struggling to get applicants to fill that position. When they need ALS service, who do they call? They're gonna call us.
Yeah. And what about, I mean, I'm sorry, this is a real question.
No.
So, I mean, we can argue all day. Some people think, we've done a good job with the infrastructure around here. Some people think we haven't. Well, I don't care which way you look at it. Grand Park stinks. The traffic's terrible. Are all the lights and everything set up to be, I don't even know what it's called. The sensors where it changes? Yeah.
No, actually, there is a technology piece that we have in our budget. It's called the Haas alert system, which is better than Opticom because it relays right into our cradle points, and it will preempt the light. It's called traffic preemption. So we can preempt the light if we're going in one direction. We'll capture it, and it'll send the green light so we can get traffic out of our way so we can move.
So that's something that would help us?
We're installing that this year on our trucks. As we buy new trucks, it's a standard feature on it, but we're gonna upgrade some of the stuff that we have now to get it out there. There is Opticom that we've been using. It's kind of a legacy type system, and it's still out there today. So we do have traffic preemption is what it's called.
All
We
the
do
lights
have
are
that.
set up on that?
Not all the lights, no.
Okay.
Not all the lights. A lot of the lights are owned and operated by state or federal agencies. It's their light, it's their roadway. We're just users of it. We don't add stuff to their things.
Sorry.
No, it's a legit question. Yes, sir. Thank you.
We certainly appreciate that. The data you're showing, obviously, we have some needs coming up in the near future. Does the city have a plan on adding a 4th station? What does that look like? We're short on fire trucks right now. Is the plan to get those fully staffed and then look at a Station 4? Or a Station 4 and then make up the numbers? I mean, what's
So
the game plan?
the plan, yes, the plan is multifold. I'm gonna be asking for more people and more things in the 23 budget to add a 3rd medic unit in service, so we're not relying quite so heavily. We can take care of ourselves. We've identified some area for land for Station 4. We're playing with some numbers to see how we can figure that into our budget because we know that it's going to be a large expense for people and apparatus and buildings and all of that. But we're also a valued partner. I don't want to come out and say, hey, we need all of these things yesterday, and the police department or public works or parks or whoever struggles. So we have to be a team player. We've identified some things. Working with John Rogers, we've got a plan as far as staffing that we think could be attainable. There's a couple other pieces that we're working to fit into the puzzle. But as a plan, yeah, the plan is to approach you folks with the request for additional funding next year to add apparatus and personnel, and the year after that to get us up to meeting part of the standard. We think it's too much of an ask to do it all at once. I think if we step into that, it's, you eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? So that's much more palatable than trying to do it all at once. I think it's much more forward-thinking to work with our partners in the city, other departments. But yeah, to put a new station, if you're talking today, if we were to open Station 4 in 2000 and arbitrarily just say 24, right? I'd have to order an engine today to get it delivered in time to put in service in that firehouse. We don't have the bandwidth to do that, right? It's going to take 12 if we're running 3 persons on that engine, or 4 persons assigned to that engine without giving them any vacation. 4 people on that truck, 3 shifts, 12 people minimum. They don't get any vacation. Let's figure another 1 or 2. So it's going to take 13 to 14 people just to keep that unit in service 365 with minimum staffing. Do we do that in 23? If we put that in 24, they're not going to hit the street January 1. It takes time, 6 months, to get them hired, brought in, trained, up to date before they can act on an engine. So there's some real-world decisions that have to be made, and we have to be cognizant of the dollars. We have to be good partners with our neighbors and the other departments in the city. These are all things that we're thinking about and discussing. The plan is to come to you guys and say, hey, here are our needs. Here's kind of the game plan, what we see, we think is feasible. Let you guys get to make the tough decisions.
I can't speak for the other counselors, but it'd be nice to have a 3 to 5 year look ahead,
Yes, sir.
then every year addressing, okay, this year I need this, next year I need that. It'd be nice to see that, what that game, I'm sure you guys are working it, but I'd like
Yeah.
to see that game plan so I can better understand what we can expect in the coming
Would
years.
love to meet with you, any of you. Sit down and discuss it and take a look at it. We've got it.
You've got, okay, good.
Yeah. It's not all prettied up and lipstick, but no, we have it. We have a staffing plan and those things. The magic question is, I can't tell you when I need to order stuff, if it's going to be a 2-year wait or a 6-month wait to get it. Right now today, to order a fire truck, it's going to cost you $600,000. It's going to be 20 months before it's delivered. For a medic unit, it's going to be between $300,000 and $400,000, and it's 500 days after they receive the chassis. That's the reality.
I would agree with Councilor Willis. I think the sooner we can meet with you and really put together a 5 to 10-year plan and work against that plan, it seems like we have been doing it a little bit in bits and pieces without the big vision. I mean, we bought fire equipment a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago. Just this year, I think we approved the new fire station for $14.5 million. And so the next fire station, I'm assuming, would that be the same dollar amount? Would it be the same size? Would it
No.
be a different size?
So just in full clarity, we didn't approve a new fire station. We're relocating Station 1. It's not an additional. We're still 3
understand.
stations.
But we are building a new.
Yes.
So would
And that
the-
station is administration. It is the folks at Station 81, the fire and EMS personnel at Station 81, and it is our fleet services unit, all in one building. So Station 4 does not include all of that. Now, I can't tell you it's not going to cost $13.8 million because
'Cause that's a
when
couple
we
years down the
started the
road.
process, right, we're talking about $300 a square foot, and today you're looking at $350 to $400 a square foot to build a building. So I don't know what the cost is going to be in 2 years.
But I-
In reality, in my mind, it's less than that, even at today's numbers, right? Smaller footprint, the whole thing, way less than that. Councilman Fry.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but first of all, again, I'll echo what Councilor Willis said. Thank you. Thank you
You're
to
welcome,
you and your
sir.
team for all you do. Just curious, you have a plan. You're going to share that with us. We look forward to meeting. I look forward to meeting with you. I'm sure everyone up here does. In a 7-year window, how many more stations does your plan include?
In a 7-year window, tell me what the market's going to do and how people are going to be. In a perfect world, if things are as they are now and we're still continuing to grow and do what we're doing, in 7 years, we're going to be about 7,000 or 8,000 calls. I see us around 6 or 7 stations, and I think that's a reality,
Thank you.
right? That puts it as a population. In 6.5 years, we're going to be larger than Noblesville is today. Put it in perspective, they're at 7 stations, 140, 150 folks. The next 6 or 7 years, I really think that's where we should be.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have the ability, but I think that's where we should be. Thank you.
Chief?
Yes.
it's- On those comparisons that you showed, it just seemed like our calls per capita were way higher than the surrounding cities. Is everyone's calls per capita up, or?
So that's
Is our
it's a
population
great question.
changing?
I will tell you, had a conversation with a chief friend of mine over at the city of Noblesville, and it was the end of December, and he was happy they were up 1,000 calls. Couldn't believe it. We're up 1,000 runs. We were up over 1,000 runs. Per capita, I don't know what that means. We're not a per capita thing. We have 20, 50,000 people come to Grand Park on a Thursday. Doesn't increase our call volume.
Yeah, I guess that's my question. So I was trying to think of, is there a uniqueness about Westfield? Maybe our demographics changing with age, maybe it's the visitors
No.
at Grand Park, maybe it's,
So I would love to tell you that that's it, but it's not. We've run the numbers, compared it based on the addresses in the city versus the calls, the locations versus the calls. We've got heat maps. And a heat map isn't going to tell you what you want to know because we've got nursing facilities in 3 areas. And where do you think most of our runs come from? It's isolated those 3 areas. So what's a heat map tell you? Not a whole lot. We've run the data. There is no direct correlation in the number of people, because quite frankly, we have millions of people that travel our highways every single day that don't live here in the community that call for our services. Whether or not they're traveling from South Bend to Indianapolis and get in a fender bender, they're still calling for our services. Wish I could answer that directly. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Other questions, councilors? Chief Caleb, thank you very
Thank
much.
you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Next presentation is going to be on the tax base based on sustainability report and the rooftop report from Caleb Ernest. And I guess we're going to continue discussing the growth of Westfield. Caleb?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Johns, member of the council, good evening. For the record, Kevin Todd with the Community Development Department. I'll just give a quick introduction here before Caleb jumps in, just kind of to bring everybody in the room up to speed. We were asked back in the spring by the Finance Committee to provide a report to that committee regarding our housing data. Specifically, we were asked to provide, number one, how many units we currently have built in our community. Secondly, how many units are approved through zoning but not yet built. And then a third component was we were asked to look 5 years out and give a projection 5 years out. In addition to those raw housing numbers, we were also asked to provide associated financial information related to our current and projected housing stock. So we're here to present that this evening. Senior Planner Caleb Ernest will walk you through that. I just want to take a quick moment here publicly to thank Caleb for all of his work and effort in putting this together. We had a lot of this information, or really all of this information, but it wasn't in a format that was easy to use. So he spent a lot of time organizing it and putting it all together for us to digest. So thank you, Caleb, for your work here on that. So quickly, just to give some framework to this presentation, Caleb will start with a brief introduction, give some framework to it, just so everybody that's hearing this begins from the same baseline of information before diving into the numbers. And then following Caleb's portion of the presentation, John Rogers is here to address the value related to the housing data. So with that, I will turn it over to the professor. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Kevin said, we're going to go over some kind of brief baseline terminology here. So when we talk about zoning, just wanted to point out that Westfield has this unique situation where we have jurisdiction over not just our corporate limits, but the entire township limits as well when it comes to zoning. So every property in the township and the city is assigned a zoning or zoning district. So when we talk about zoning, there's essentially two types. There's either straight zoned or there's a PUD. So straight zoning refers to a zoning district that was established at the time when zoning districts were assigned to every property. Right, so unless, of course, it was rezoned to another zoning district over the years. So typically, there's no third party that was involved in zoning these properties. There's no developer input. So straight zone can be abbreviated STZ. Examples of this include our agriculture districts, our single-family districts, our multifamily districts. And really the difference between all these zoning districts is lot area, living area, setbacks, etc. So we have a map here. We have US 31. We have State Road 32. This is the northeast area of the city. Everything that is highlighted is an example of a straight zoned zoning district. When we talked about planned unit developments, they are either a new or an amended zoning district proposed and approved by a third-party developer that's modifying or creating new standards for a property or properties. So essentially, it's a set of standards that's overlaid on top of a zoning district. In most cases, this is created by a third-party developer. So PUD stands for Planned Unit Development. Examples of this: Maple Knoll, Lantern Commons, Chatham Hills, Bridgewater Club, North Point. Same aerial, northeast part of the city. Everything highlighted here is an example of a residential PUD. There are other PUDs on the map, but those are non-residential PUDs. When we talk about our housing stock, we talk about two different types of units: single-family units and multifamily units. Single-family units contain single-family homes. Can be abbreviated SF. Single-family typically means that there is one unit on an individual lot. For multifamily units, it can contain apartments, duplexes, townhome units. MF is abbreviated for multifamily. And typically, more than one unit is on an individual lot and or within the same building for multifamily. So going over the numbers, I've chosen to organize this data into two groups, each with two subgroups. The two groups that this data will be represented in is existing units and expected units. The two subgroups within existing units is 100% built and not 100% built. Within expected units, the two subgroups is completing construction and construction has not started. So we're going to explore each of these categories briefly. So for existing units, 100% built, these are units that have been built in fully completed subdivisions, meaning that there is no more room for any future units. This includes both straight zoned and PUD subdivisions. An example of this is 169th Street, Spring Mill Road. This is the southwest area of the city. Keeneland Park subdivision. Every single lot within this subdivision has been built. So it is an example of a 100% built subdivision. Now, a quick disclaimer here. Some of the subdivisions that were included in 100% built, I have deemed that they are geographically built out, so they are counted as being 100% built. So what this means is that even though the subdivision was approved for a certain number of units, not all those units were or are ever going to be built. So an example of this is Lantern Park. We have Westfield Boulevard, 161st Street. Lantern Park was approved for 60 single-family units. Only 58 of those approved 60 were actually built, so geographically there is no more room to put the remainder 2 units. For the sake of this category, 100% built is only including the 58 units that are actually built. Moving on to the next category, not 100% built. These are units that are built and located in subdivisions that are partially completed, meaning they are located in unfinished subdivisions. This only includes PUD subdivisions. Example of this is the West Rail subdivision, just a random example that I found. It was approved for 236 units. 155 units are currently built. 81 units remain to be built in that subdivision. So for this grouping, we are only including the 155 units. This is the West Rail subdivision, located at Ditch Road, 161st Street to the north, 156th to the south. It's the southwest area of the city. Everything that is outlined here is the 155 units that are included in this category. Moving on to the next category of expected units, completing construction. These are units that will be completing construction in subdivisions that are partially completed. So these are units that will be built in those unfinished subdivisions. This only includes PUDs. Same example, West Rail subdivision 236, 155 units currently built, 81 units remain to be built. This category is only focusing on 81 units. Same aerial, same West Rail subdivision. The outlined areas are those 81 units that have yet to be built. The last subcategory is the construction has not started. These are units that have not started construction. They are units that are approved to be built, but have not started building. This only includes PUD subdivisions. An example of this, different examples, the Somerset PUD was approved in 2021. It was approved for 152 units. For clarity purposes, this category focuses on the 152 units. Here's an aerial. You have 186th Street, Spring Mill Road. Outlined in blue is the Somerset PUD. From the aerial, no construction has started. Not a single unit has begun building. Brief recap is that existing 100% built, every single unit has been built. Existing not 100% built is partially built out. Completing construction are units that have not started construction, but we know it will be completing in those unfinished subdivisions. Construction has not started, no construction has started. Moving forward, before we get to the actual numbers, it's important to cover some averages. For single-family permits, the accurate way to track the averages is through building permits. In 2017, we processed 719 building permits, 2018, 786, and so on. That puts us at a 5-year average of about 917 permits a year. What this means is that in 2017, there were 719 single-family units. 2018, 786, and so on. This means that every year, there is approximately 917 single-family units. When we talk about multifamily, the most accurate way to track multifamily is through certificates of occupancy. Different than a permit, certificates of occupancy track the actual multifamily unit that is building. So in 2017, 144 certificates of occupancy were processed, 2018, 68, and so on. That puts a 5-year average of 210 multifamily units a year. So that means is 2017, 144 units of multifamily was processed and built, 2018, 68, and so on. Getting into the actual numbers here, single-family units, again abbreviated SF, and one single-family home equals one single-family unit. 59% of all approved single-family homes have been built in fully completed subdivisions. That's 13,800 units. 15% of all approved single-family homes are located in subdivisions that are partially completed. That's about 3,400 units. They have been built and are located in unfinished subdivisions. 20% of all approved single-family homes will be completing construction. That's about 4,500 units will be built in those unfinished subdivisions. And 6% of all approved single-family homes have not started construction. That's about 1,400 units that are approved to build but have not started building. What this means is that 17,287 units exist today. They have already been built. This also means that just over 6,000 units do not exist but are approved to be built. Using our averages of 917 single-family building permits a year, future construction will take 6.5 years to build. That's 5 years for the units that are completing construction and 1.5 years for units where construction has not started. Moving on to multifamily units, again abbreviated MF. One multifamily home does not necessarily equal one multifamily unit. If we remove home and replace it with building, one multifamily building could have 6 townhome units, 2 duplex units, or 12 apartment units. So one multifamily unit could equal 1 apartment unit, 1 townhome unit, or 1 duplex unit. When we look at our multifamily numbers, 49% of all approved multifamily homes have been built in fully completed subdivisions. That's just over 4,000 units. 8% of all approved multifamily homes are located in subdivisions that are partially completed. It's about 637 units that are built in unfinished subdivisions. 4% will be completing construction. It's about 351 will be built in those unfinished subdivisions. And 39% of all approved multifamily homes have not started construction. It's about 3,300 units that are approved to build, but have not started building. What this means is that 4,700 units exist today. They have already been built. What this also means is that just over 3,600 units do not exist but are approved to be built. So using the averages of 210 certificates of occupancy released a year, future construction will take about 17 years to build. 1.6 years for those units completing construction, and 15.8 years for units where construction has not started. Those are both looking at the isolated categories by themselves, so together our complete total residential housing stock. 56% of all approved single-family and multifamily homes have been built in fully completed subdivisions. That's 17,888 units. 13% are located in subdivisions that are partially completed. It's about 4,100 units that are built but are located in unfinished subdivisions. 16% will be completing construction. It's about 4,900 units will be built in those unfinished subdivisions. And 15% of all approved single-family and multifamily homes have not started construction. That's about 4,700 units. This means that just over 22,000 units of both single-family and multifamily together exist today. They have already been built. This also means that just over 9,600 units do not exist, but are approved to be built. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to John Rogers to briefly talk about value and numbers.
Thank you, appreciate that. Good evening, Council, Mayor. John Rogers, Director of Enterprise. What you see in front of you here is basically comes straight out of the product that we produce with FSG, the sustainability analysis. We use the numbers and a lot of the information that Caleb and Kevin's group put together tonight in developing that sustainability analysis. And what you really see, I won't read the notes to you, but you can see that we have pretty solid growth of property taxes and lit enterprise-wide. And the general fund and fire fund expenses, a nice steady line of growth to go with the growth of the city. But what you're really seeing, I think, here is opportunity to grow that 2 and 3% commercial. Because with just a little bit of commercial growth, you get that slight deviation out of that top line out, and you get a parallel growth. Right now, most of that property tax growth, or most of that property taxes we're receiving, almost half is generated from 1%, right? So if you could grow the other half, right, 75% of the gross AV approximately is residential. So that means 25% is 2 and 3%. So if you could just grow that a little bit, that number picks up and they never cross. Any questions for Caleb or I?
Explain that again. You said half is
So-
2 to 3%, and then you said 25%
So
is 2
basically-
to 3%. So what is that again?
The gross AV, right? 75% of the gross AV is from the 1%. But that only produces about half of what actually ends up in our pocket from property taxes. 25% of the gross is 2 and 3%. It's much smaller. But it provides half, the other half, of the property taxes. So if you can grow that part of the equation with a little effort, you have a sustainable, which is what we're looking for, right? Is a sustainable product
Sustainable for what?
for growth, for just the growth of
For what?
the growth of the city.
For what?
I'm not sure I follow.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this exercise to begin with, when we were talking about the finance committee, is if you look at our finances, I've gone back from 2010 through today, and I've looked at the growth of our finances. Number one, we haven't created many efficiencies in terms of the government size. But I listened to the fire chief, and he's got some, I think probably some legitimate things there, but so we've grown our assessed value for the opportunity to build a grand junction. We've increased our assessed value for the opportunity to add things that aren't helping our infrastructure. I mean, you know, our roads, our you know, so I'm saying sustainable, it'll help us for what? You keep saying it's gonna, if we could just add this, it'll help us with our sustainability. It'll sustain us for what? I mean, for what are we going to do with the money? You know, I've made the comment before, and every time I see Birch, he actually reminds me, I said, you know, everybody wants to be the last person that moves here to Westfield, right? And I say, well, if I look at the city and I look at the city finances, what do we need it for? What is the money going to be used for? I'm okay with fire and that sort of thing, but I don't want to go spend another $50 million. Hey, let's just go add a bunch of commercial development and housing so we can add another $50 million for a bunch of stuff that I don't know. I walked through the park the other day and I think there was like 32 people in the park, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, let's grow it. What are we going to grow it for? What are we going to use the money for? If it's going to be for police, fire, and infrastructure and roads, no problem. If it's going to be to build the next pet project, no. I mean, that's my point behind when we did the exercise, that's why I wanted to see. It appears to me that we're flush with cash as a city. We don't need, I mean, so everybody's going to say, oh, Troy Patton, he's for no growth. I mean, I can hear it already. It's going to be on Facebook before I get home. But But I'm saying that we have everything we need currently. If you look at the finances, I mean, I'm hearing the fire chief, and I'm saying, hey, you know, there's probably some legitimate things there that, you know, we need. I mean, but we have the money currently. I mean, no offense. I mean, I like watching Mondays with the mayor just as much as anybody, but do we need to spend $300,000 on a PR campaign for things like that? I'd rather use the money for the fire department. I mean, and I'm not saying, and actually Chris, I don't know if he's here, he does a heck of a job. I think he does a really good job. I'm just saying, there's certain things, I mean, what are we using the money for? That's enough. I've said, I keep blabbing, so.
Any other questions? Thank you all.
Thank you, John. I did have a question, I guess, maybe for Kevin. Kevin, so these numbers were put together, it says in March. Is that March 1st or the end of March? Just to clarify.
Be for the end of March.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and will you be able to continue monitoring the growth from there on? I know one of the things you said, Kevin, it was extremely difficult for Caleb to be able to grab all these numbers and put them together. I know one of the things is from a growth standpoint, the city council, the APC would like to have a better handle on where our growth is. So having done this exercise, will you be able now to continue this and just provide like quarterly updates to both the APC and the city council? Is that?
It'll be much easier to provide updates because this data was never collected before.
You guys did a good job.
Did it?
Kevin, Caleb, you guys did a good job on that.
Yeah, I think you really did a good job. I guess the observation that I would make as we're looking at the growth of the city, and we hear that we're the fastest growing community in the state of Indiana. We're growing at 7.7%, and that's pretty phenomenal. And we're looking here, and we're seeing that our single-family units, we're basically 74% of them exist. We're looking at another 6,000 that are going to be built, and Caleb, you're saying it's going to be about six and a half years to build those out.
Based on the
based upon
5-year average, yeah.
The past history, if you will.
Correct.
And our multifamily units, it looks like we're about 3,700 short on those, and you think that might take another 17 years to build those out based upon the past experience, which I would suggest is probably going to ramp up and won't be 17 years, because as these buildings start getting built, they're moving dirt now, and I think it's going to happen a lot quicker than 17 years. So
We actually find that a single multifamily project, like so one property of multifamily, takes about a year or 2 years to build out. So where the units may be released periodically throughout there, the close of the project may actually take a year or two to finish.
okay, so it could be less time than that 17 years then.
It might be more accurate than I think, because those numbers are based on exactly what I was saying, is that the units are completed over a course of a year or two until the project's completed. So it may take about that time. And again, that's going on the assumption that every single unit is built.
Well, I think what I noticed here from your numbers, which I think, I assume are 100% accurate, I have no doubt after the work you did, we're looking at about 9,700 units to be built out that are approved yet, which is doable, I think, which also continues our growth rate. I think that's a little different than the chief's numbers, because I think the chief had cited 13.
Well, he was
13,000.
mentioning the single-family numbers, if that was correct. Yeah, just the single-family portion.
Just a single-family portion,
Yeah, the single-family numbers that
which would be the
construction
6,000.
has not started on.
6,000 then.
It was
Okay.
to go back to it.
I just assumed he did the total of two, because I think he cited 13,000, and your numbers were 9,700, so 10,000. So, but that's not a big deal. Okay, I mean, the big deal is that We have a growth rate of about 7.7%. It is coming, whether it's a 6.5-year build-out or a 10-year build-out. And we as a council need to figure out how we're going to finance the infrastructure needs that we have, the fire department, the police stations and whatnot based upon that growth. The other thing that we as a council discussed over the last several months, if not a couple of years, is that are we growing too quickly? Should we close down? Should we not close down, but should we slow our approval of projects? And based upon what you've told us, we're looking at a 6.5-year build-out. There might not be any sense of urgency to approve any mass PUDs at this point in time. And I just throw that out as an observation for the council to consider as we move forward. And perhaps it's not saying that we don't want to approve any PUDs. Perhaps it is saying that we want to be much more selective with the projects that are coming to Westfield, because we do have a certain buffer of growth already in the hopper, so to speak. So just an observation. Councilors?
Just one last comment. John, when we were thinking about the, when we were doing this exercise, we talked about the commercial side too. And,
Excuse me.
And one thing that the chart, what we probably need to think about in the chart is that, a lot of our commercial taxpayers, are on abatements or whatever. And so, as those come off, I don't know where we're at, but I mean, I don't know what those numbers look like, but that's just additional dollars, that.
Yeah, and they are, but the materiality for this conversation is
Yeah.
not what you might think.
Yeah, I mean, but I remember seeing some of the spreadsheets. I mean, it was like $1 million. I mean, for one project. I mean, it'd be $1 million more then than today. I mean, so I'm just thinking, I don't know how, I don't know what those numbers are. I have no clue. But just something to think about.
Again, yes,
I mean,
we
and
keep,
everybody, we all should think about that. I mean, when it comes to the budget process, I mean, whether you like it or don't or whatever. So, anyway, sorry.
I was just going to follow up on that because I was actually going to ask that same question. Again, Kevin, I appreciate all the work that went into this, and Caleb and the whole team. I know there's a lot of man hours involved in compiling this information, so it's important. It's very helpful. It's useful. I appreciate the work. I know we did talk about the commercial side. I trust that we're still working on that and still moving forward so that we can have this same conversation on that as well.
Yeah, that's correct. We have, since the day after we gave this presentation, the Finance Committee, we've started churning
Okay.
on that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
We're through kind
know
of
it's
the
a lot.
first rough round of that internally, and we'll finish that out. We're hoping to have it back in front of you before the end of the summer, is our hope.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Sorry, I had also made that request. Caleb, thank you, awesome report, about dividing out multifamily so that we could know how many were apartments and rentals versus, say, townhomes, duplexes, quads for sale. So I don't know if you guys remember, I made that request as well.
Sorry, could you restate that again?
I had asked for the information about breaking multifamily into apartments and rentals versus townhomes, duplexes, quads that were for sale. I had sent that request. I'm not sure if the council's seen all that yet or not.
Okay. I thought that we sent that.
Yeah, but did you share it with everyone? I'm not sure. I'm asking you, did you share all that information with the whole council? So thanks for finding that. I think maybe the whole council would, since we're having this conversation, just reiterating. So that was good. Thank you so much for all that work.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you, Caleb, John. Moving on, we have another next presentation is an update from Informatics on the efforts associated with Beyond Trust software and the Veracity report. And I think Chris Larson, our Director of Informatics, has a presentation for us at this point. Chris?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Everyone still awake? I'm Christopher Larson. I am the Director of Informatics for the City of Westfield, and I came this evening just to kind of touch base on a letter that I sent to all the council members, or Jeremy actually sent out, that just has a brief timeline of communications that I had with Dan Smith, who's hired by Veracity, so that we could hopefully communicate and get through some things, because we've spent a lot of time talking about some allegations, or I don't know the word to use, but there's been a lot of discussion about some of the technology being used in the clerk's office and throughout the city. And so I put that together, and just quick recaps, met with Dan one-on-one, had a great conversation for about an hour. Then he came back 2 other times, met with me and 4 members of my team, and we went through a lot of detail that was in the Veracity report, answered a lot of questions. There was a lot of emails and data exchanged or sent to him during that time period. And kind of, we got to a point where the mayor, came to me and said, we need to get to the end of this. We're spending a lot of time, resource, money on this, and, we believe that nothing has happened or anything like that. So I had this meeting to kind of come to you guys, say, hey, what do you guys want to do next? And I go to pre-council, and it turns out that Dan's also presenting tonight. And I don't know what he's presenting on. So at this time, unless you have a very specific question, I'd love to give up any extra time I had going through that very boring timeline and let Dan present, so that we can all be informed about any of the information he's taken from that communication, and we can, I just humbly ask that you allow me to respond or answer any questions after he's presented. So,
Thank you, Chris.
thank you.
Next presentation then will be, I think, Dan Smith from Veracity, and Will Webster's going to address the Veracity update.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some brief comments tonight. I know we have a long night ahead of us, so I'll try to be brief. And certainly, I just wanted to say my intention is not to speak disparagingly about anybody. I like everybody in the room. I'm just summarizing the facts as I understand them today. So as the council's aware, Dan Smith, who is a certified computer examiner, provided a digital forensic report detailing concerns about third parties accessing the clerk treasurer's computers without the clerk's knowledge or consent. During that review, Dan also identified some additional issues we weren't aware of. A computer of interest that appeared to have more activity than the others was operated by Bev Rawlings. Now, that computer is the only computer in the clerk treasurer's office that is protected by encryption, meaning that Dan was not able to do any forensic auditing on that particular machine. Dan also discovered a text document which appeared to be saving passwords or keystrokes used by the clerk and her staff. He also discovered the capability of Beyond Trust Vault, which has the potential to store the clerk's login credentials to access city systems. We asked Dan to work with city IT to determine if additional information can be obtained to help address some of those concerns. We also, to be mindful of costs, we asked Dan to be very measured in his approach with the information provided by city IT. Can you verify or not? If you can't verify, let's move on to the next topic. You've been provided a copy of Dan Smith's current findings summary, I believe, which contradicts the summary that was provided by Mr. Larson. Just to touch on a few issues to highlight on the report, one issue we had was the log. So Beyond Trust offers different types of logs. One's a forensic audit log, and then a video recorded audit log that would have allowed Dan to examine and 100% verify all actions taken by users of Beyond Trust. The city IT unfortunately did not have forensic audit logs, and then unfortunately city IT did not also have video recorded audit logs available for Dan to review. City IT did provide a sample of logs that unfortunately were in edible format, so therefore Dan cannot 100% verify the logs in the format that were provided. In regards to Bev Rawlings' computer, it appeared the city IT did not know why, or at least we have not been provided an explanation as to why Bev's computer was encrypted, and was concerned. He didn't seem too concerned that it was encrypted. The text document with passwords, Dan had talked to city IT, and again, they didn't know why that document was there. Could have been this, could have been that, but again, wasn't sure why that text document was again found on her computers. The Beyond Trust Vault, I believe the city IT was able to confirm that the Beyond Trust Vault saves the clerk treasurer's credentials, and access to that vault can be given to third parties. However, no information was shared as to what, if any, third parties were given access to that vault feature. City IT identified potential other users of Beyond Trust, one of those being Paula Brown, who is a former employee of Finley Cook. City IT had indicated, or at least explained to Dan, that Paula had used Beyond Trust in her, providing some assistance to the clerk treasurer. We were able to reach out to Paula Brown and asked her about this, and she's never heard or used Beyond Trust. In regard to third-party access, City IT has repeatedly stated they do not have the ability to engage remote access sessions without the clerk's knowledge or consent. This knowledge and consent is prompted by a dialog box before the end user gives permission. That is completely contradictory to the Beyond Trust representative that Dan talked to. It also contradicts the information published by Beyond Trust of its own products. The Jump Client feature specifically, which is downloaded on all the clerk's computers, its purpose is to allow users to access those machines without end users' consent. The city clerk treasurer's office has never been prompted, or at least has never seen a dialog box. This was backed up by Dan's, again, forensic audit of the computers. He can find no evidence of any log on the clerk treasurer's computers. They were prompted to click on a dialog box. And so, if city IT, and again, I have no reason to refute Mr. Larson, if they only use Beyond Trust with a dialog box, then the only conclusion I come up with is that we have someone else using Beyond Trust, because, again, that dialog box is not appearing on the clerk treasurer's computer. The city IT explained that the clerk treasurer laptops were all being worked on at the same time at the home of the city employee, which may have explained some of the activity that we saw. I think Dan will be the first one to say that can explain some of the activity, but certainly wouldn't explain all the uses on all the computers, and wouldn't cover all the timeline in question. Currently, those laptops, again, have not been returned to the clerk treasurer's office as we sit here tonight. But Dan is with me, so if anybody has any questions or anybody, feel free to ask Dan. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nice. Say a couple words.
Okay, lots of fun stuff. Yes, sir.
You have a copy of this report?
I do not.
Could we have a copy of this report?
I'll get one to you.
Well, we need it now, yeah.
You don't mind?
I didn't get a copy of yours.
It would have been nice to have that
Yes,
for
it
now.
would have very well, it would have been nice had I had a copy of his as well.
My report is just a timeline of my interactions with Dan Smith. It does just make a claim that, it makes a few claims that Beyond Trust is not spyware, and that that we were not recording video and audio. That is a feature that you can have turned on. It is designed for auditing, so if you have a large corporation with a large help desk, they may turn that on to record a session so that they can use it for training later, or to make sure the technician is using it correctly. We've never enabled that. One of the things that came up in the initial report is that we were screen sharing and screen recording, and this kind of proves that we were not, definitely not through Beyond Trust, because we never turned it on. So I know that that would have provided potentially some proof of what we were doing at time that he could review, but it also at the same time would be that we were recording everything on everybody's computer, which I'm not sure that we're allowed to, considering we use the same software on our police officers, and that we have to follow CJIS compliance on that sort of stuff. Bev's drive being encrypted, a lot of computers automatically come with it. Normally, we actually remove it because we don't need it, and I'm sorry that it wasn't removed. It was one of the machines that was given to Bev during COVID when she was working from home, and we just simply did not remove the encryption. We actually don't need to encrypt our hard drives because our hard drives just house our program files. Everything else lives on the network. So we discussed this with Dan in our meeting, and so and explained to him that there's no sensitive data on those hard drives, just programs. Text file, I can't explain. I did have Mandiant review that, which is another third-party cybersecurity company and they did not see any sign of rainbow tables or anything in that file that would have passwords in it when they did their scan. The forensic audit log, Dan did ask for this from us. The specific forensic audit log comes from a specific asset from Beyond Trust. So just like Microsoft has Word, Excel, Visio, Publisher, Beyond Trust has multiple products. We have one product. It is the remote support, and that log does not exist in that product, in that asset. So I provided our session logs, which, yes, he did not get to see. They were editable. Would have been more than happy to have him watch me download them if that was a request that had been made at any point in our meetings. It was not. Paula Brown, I can check. I think she's maybe used it once since we switched to it. Used to use TeamViewer, but didn't want to pay for 2 licenses, so we stopped TeamViewer, and I believe Paula used it at least once, but I can retrieve the data on that for sure if needed. I'm not sure if I missed anything else. Oh, the vault. So the vault cannot discover someone's password. If I were to go into the vault and say, my password is this, and hit save, it would save my password, and then I could access that when I accessed my vault to log into something. It is a very similar product to LastPass, if you've ever heard of that, which is one password for all your passwords. You put all your stuff in there. The product cannot, and if you go and look in depth in the features on the product on Beyond Trust website, cannot discover password. It can discover usernames, it can discover who logged in and when they logged in last, but it can't discover passwords. And more than, there's no security breach or anything, there's more than welcome to show what's in our vault. What's in there is specific password and logins for any vendor that needs to get to a very specific computer or firewall to help us with a managed service. So that's all I have. I would love to read this report and obviously get a response to council members if you have any. I know that this just seems like we're going around in circles here, so you guys tell me what to do next. But I mean, I don't know how else to make it seem that, you know, you have honest people, many of them that are city citizens that want to protect this data, and most of this data is private or is public. It's all can be asked for because it's all our pays and things like that. So I don't know. Any questions?
I have a couple.
Oh, go ahead.
First of all, I appreciate the update. Appreciate the feedback. I think you said a lot when you said it seems like we're going in circles. It does seem like we're going in circles. I don't know that there's any, don't know where to place the blame for that. I don't know if there's blame necessary to place for that, but we're going in circles. I think the city deserves better than that. I don't have it in front of me, I apologize, but as I was reading the report that, or the information that you had sent through Jeremy, if I understand that, if I remember correctly, you or your team have been out and helped the clerk treasurer's office on numerous occasions since this whole process started. Is that correct with IT support?
Oh yeah, we're still IT support for the clerk's office.
Absolutely. So thank you for doing that. So that tells me that since this concern, since this was brought to the forefront, whatever purpose, and I'm not assigning what that purpose is, but whatever purpose Beyond Trust served, or in theory would have served, we're not using it right now, right?
Not within the clerk's office, that's
Okay.
correct.
Can I have someone explain to me why we haven't simply removed it then?
Can we talk about the settlement? Awesome. So obviously just to get everything out there. There's 2 lawsuits that are still standing. One against the city against Cindy, one's Cindy against the mayor. And there is a settlement agreement that is in place. That is one of the items in the settlement is to remove it, and we will, continue to provide services in person. Right, yes, all proposed, the settlement has not been agreed upon. That's one of a number of items within that settlement that, we're trying to work to come to an agreement and end this and move forward.
So, please understand, I guess now my conversation is directed this way, so I guess I'm just having a hard time wrapping my mind around this, that there's clearly a concern, let me put it that way. There's a concern. We can debate probably if we continue at this pace for the next 5 years whether or not that concern is valid. There's a concern. Clearly it provides no benefit at this point in time because we've been doing this, we've been having these conversations for months and months and months. Chris and his team have still been providing IT support for the clerk treasurer's office without utilizing this tool, this software. So it can be done. At this point, it's almost a, planting your flag in the ground and saying, I'm not budging off of this. Why can't we remove it as a gesture of goodwill and say, hey, you know what? It's not what you thought it was, but to show you that we don't need it and that's not what you thought it was, we're going to remove it anyway. Let's all move forward the way that we're supposed to move forward for the taxpayers, period. What am I missing?
Nothing. The proposal's with council. Blake and Will have been talking about it. I want to answer your question. And really, this is a Chris issue. There is absolutely nothing going on here. There never has been. And we have, ever since, a year ago now, you guys have stopped spending money on lawsuits. We have. And said, Chris, can you please address whatever concerns Mr. Smith or Mr. Webster or the clerk might have about any of these allegations? And boy, did he. I had a chance to read the letter too, and I mean, there was, I don't know how many
Manny, I
times
can't
tried to
hear
meet
you.
with him or met with him.
Manny, they can't hear you.
And answered every single one of his questions, the amount of man hours he spent and time he spent doing it. I agree. This should long be over.
So, okay, I agree that there's been a ton of man hours, sorry, Jake, on both sides. And ultimately, the taxpayer's paying for that one way or another, whether it's just through loss of productivity or extra expenses, it doesn't matter. The reality of it is, I still can't wrap my mind around why it has to be part of an agreement, part of a settlement. Just remove the software. I don't think Chris is going to do that without instruction from you folks. Why can't we just give that instruction? Chris, you, someone on your team, go remove the software. Let's start moving forward. Let's put this behind us and move on.
Well, the software A cannot be removed and won't be removed for citywide. This is hundreds of people. And the
Clerk
city's not
treasurer's
going
office
to
is all
go.
we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the proposal.
Why does it have to be a proposal? Why can't,
Because in order to settle these lawsuits, there has to be a release.
So I'm hearing that they're waiting
'Cause we don't
on
want this to keep
you to
happening.
accept the settlement. Is that the case? Because that's what it sounds like. Is that the case? They're like, sure, we'll remove it. Why are we all waiting on you guys to accept the settlements? What sounds like he's saying.
Do you want to come up to the mic so that
Yeah.
people on the call can hear you? Thank you.
Is that the vault or the jump client feature that's on the computers, if that was simply removed, Beyond Trust could still be used as an IT product. It would just, the end user would have to give permission for someone to access those computers. So, and again, Dan can speak to that.
This is where I get
Can I
off,
ask?
because I'm not an IT person, neither is he, and Chris is over here shaking his head. Can we
Dan?
have Chris answer these questions
I'm just-
directly, who's the
I'm saying
professional?
that's my understanding, that if this app part of its software was removed, then the end user has to be prompted. But that jump client on there then allows people to access that computer without the end user's permission.
Okay, I have to ask some questions here.
Sure.
Because I think this has a lot to do with me, from Ms. Gossard, in that, what are we trying to solve here with all of this? What has occurred that we are trying to solve?
Trying to
What
find
kind-
out what happened to our computers. Why was one of BKD's men, why did his name auto-populate? We took screenshots.
Okay, what kind of damage have you suffered? What have I done to harm you?
We don't have time for that.
Cindy,
That would take
Well, I
hours.
think that is the gist of what we're talking
Yeah,
about here.
because it's been since 2007, 2008. We can talk about it, but I've
and-
got some notes.
and
So
I-
what,
later.
what are we trying to solve?
Mr. Mayor, let me jump in. This is not the forum for this.
No.
Certainly, we don't have
No,
time to get into all that.
I beg
There-
your pardon, it is a forum.
Perfect. Let me continue, please. There is such a wedge, such a delta created between the administration and the clerk treasurer's office. I can't, again, why we're sitting here playing the games of what did I do? What is the problem? I'm not pointing a finger at you, I'm not pointing a finger at her, but to say I don't know what we're trying to solve is silly. To say that we're gonna continue to do this and we're only gonna remove it if you meet certain guidelines, I don't understand that. It's a tool that's not, I have no idea. I have no idea what it was used for. I'm not an IT expert. All I know is there's tremendous concern in the clerk treasurer's office. Why in the world, since it's a tool you don't need, why in the world wouldn't you simply remove it and let's say, let's start working more closely together and move forward?
I have no problem with that.
Perfect. When can we
But
expect
you
that?
just said that we need to work together to solve what? What?
I don't think I'm gonna get it to sink in. I apologize. I don't have it in me tonight. I just don't.
I don't either.
I think I
I'm
could,
just not
I could-
clear.
I could
what-
frame the-
What is the damage that we have?
Just remove it. Just
could-
remove the software. I mean, just remove it and call it a day. Even whether they sign it or not, let's just move it,
And that's
remove it, and be
probably,
done.
honestly,
And
Troy,
that's-
that's probably where we're gonna end up. Can Chris, A, answer that question, and B, another just observation, that these apparently horrendous people that have perpetrated all this stuff on the clerk treasurer, they've serviced her computers dozens of times since then. It's just beginning to be silly and a huge waste of time. So if we could just move on, and if Chris can answer, I think it was Troy's question about the jump client or whatever it was, that'd be great.
and if I
Dan
could just
may
comment
have
on that
some
real quick.
input as well.
Again, the concern is, and we hope that nothing happened, nothing nefarious was going on, and, we appreciate the effort, City IT, we're just unable to verify some information we need to verify. But the concern from the clerk treasurer's office is they have sensitive data and sensitive information. And as technology got to the point that other people outside the clerk treasurer's office can access those computers without their knowledge or consent,
Right.
whether they intend to or not, they have the ability to do it. And I think that we've established and looked at, people have the ability to do that, whether they would or not, but they have the ability to do it. And so I think it's more of a security concern from the clerk, is why we've raised issues with the particular software. And I believe, and Dan can speak on this. or
So if we
Chris,
just remove the software, we're done.
I believe in just one component of it, just the
Just,
jump.
and then we're
client.
done.
Then
we're
that,
done.
then that way, then if someone wants access to
Good.
computers.
Okay,
it's
let's
fine.
do it.
So,
Monday or
Can
tomorrow.
we ask Chris
Let's
if that's the
remove it and be done.
solution? If it is, great. Let's.
Chris,
can
can you
please
remove the
answer?
software tomorrow?
Yes.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, the jump client and the remote access are the same tool. So
So
it's
we
just
can
one
remove the
software.
whole
Just
software,
remove
so
it.
it doesn't matter, right?
Just service her office the way.
That's correct, yeah.
Just like.
Thank you. Perfect.
And be done. Okay. There you go. We just saved the
Does he have
taxpayer
any more?
$100,000.
Do you have anything
So if we
else to
do
say?
that, then Will, are you gonna release the lawsuit and we're gonna be done with this? We
Come
won't
on
have to hear about this ever again?
Well, we. Certainly discuss, we have a response, we're waiting for a response and we can chat about it. Nobody wants to put this behind us more than Chris and
Or
the
me.
people
Yeah.
here.
All
So
right,
that's really the key.
can we agree then tonight that Chris will remove the software from the clerk's computers?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, tomorrow, is that doable?
Sure.
And that over the next 2 weeks, the councils, various councils will have a chance to meet together and then give us a report 2 weeks from now as far as the status of the lawsuits and how they
There's no need
dismiss.
for a report. They'll either be dismissed or they won't.
I don't
We'll either
even want
wait
to
for a
hear, I don't want to
response or
hear
not.
anymore of
These should have been dismissed months and months ago.
Thank
So
you.
That's our
Can we-
position.
Thank you very much. And Chris, thank you for removing that tomorrow, Mayor, for making it happen. And the only statement I have other than that is, why didn't this happen 10 months ago? But thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we in agreement then the lawsuits will be removed within the next 2
We're
weeks?
waiting for a response. That's our proposal.
Is that-
Okay. We can also put a timeline together, but we'll work together.
I don't need a timeline. If he removes the software tomorrow, we're gonna move forward.
I would hope so.
Done.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So, which I get it, but in doing this, we won't really know for sure who has
Well,
been in there, except for a few.
We're moving forward.
Yeah,
We're moving forward.
and that's fine. I think everybody's
Just a point
tired
of
of it.
clarity, Cindy, if I may.
Oh, yeah. We're done.
By doing this, we know that whatever the concerns were, starting, if they remove it tomorrow, starting Wednesday, those concerns are no longer
Right.
taking place. That's what we know for sure.
Yes,
We-
moving forward.
Whatever you need to prove in the past or want to chase down in the past, that's a
Yeah.
whole different subject, but we know starting Wednesday, they're no longer taking place.
Yes,
Correct?
yes.
Excellent.
Can we move on into old business? All right. Moving on to old business then. Ordinance 22-15, Chatham Hills PUD, Amendment 9. This had a council introduction on April 11th, APC public hearing May 4th, APC recommendation for approval, unanimous, on June 6th, and it's up for adoption consideration this evening. And I believe we have Weston from our Community Development Department here to introduce the ordinance.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening, members of the council. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item being presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Chatham Hills PUD. The proposed PUD amendment is related to the 21-acre real estate located at 859 Chatham Ridge Boulevard. The petitioner is proposing to divide the subject property into two individual estate-style lots. The proposed amendment would modify the default architectural and landscaping standards associated with the subject real estate. This item was introduced at the April 11th City Council meeting and received a favorable recommendation at the June 6th Advisory Plan Commission meeting. The petitioner is here tonight to answer any questions you may have, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Weston. Councilors, do you have any questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve ordinance 22-15.
Thank you, David. Second, motion made by Troy Patton, seconded by Scott Willis. Cindy, will you please call the roll?
Cindy Spalgeric,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Our next item on the agenda is ordinance 22-19, Unifying Development Ordinance Amendment of the spring of 2022. This item had a council introduction on May 9th, public hearing, APC on May 16th. Had an APC recommendation on June 6th, and is up for adoption consideration this evening. This ordinance represents a significant change in the way that the Planning Commission process is handled, and Pam Howard is going to explain what these changes are.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening, we do have the proposed amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance. As outlined in the department report, this does change several sections, but they fall broadly into 4 categories. The first being changes to the rezoning process to accommodate a workshop meeting between the public hearing and Plan Commission recommendation. This would apply to straight rezonings, new PUD districts, as well as PUD amendments, unless it's exempted by the Plan Commission on a case-by-case basis. The second group of changes is in regard to creation of the Plat Committee and delegating the primary plat and overall development plan approval to that committee. The third group of changes involves the overall development plan and detailed development plan processes. Currently, both processes are required for all non-single-family residential projects. The updated process would require only an overall development plan for a single family, which would be both attached and detached, and only detailed development plan for multifamily and commercial projects, as well as any common areas that are not shown on a detailed development plan. The last group of changes are miscellaneous changes relating to the platting and development plan process or relevant definitions, which would have been included in a future amendment, but were added now because we were editing those sections. Amendments to the zoning ordinance do follow the same process as a rezoning with the council introduction, public hearing, and recommendation. This item did receive a recommendation from the last Plan Commission meeting and is eligible for your adoption this evening. With the recommendation, there was suggestion to include one bit of language related to tree preservation easements that was added prior to the posting of this agenda. So again, this is eligible for your adoption this evening. I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Counselor Spaljerik, Cindy, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Could you share your thoughts with the council with respect to these changes?
I am supportive of the amendments and the new plat process. I think it'll streamline it for staff. One more thing, I was hoping that Pam could actually clarify, or someone from staff, when exactly the filing change dates and things will start. I know I had a question today from a developer wondering exactly the timing of when this process starts and how that will change on the filing deadlines.
It will not change any of the filing deadlines. The process would be in effect as soon as the ordinance is approved by the council. But any projects that have been submitted and have a docket number will need to follow the old process. So our next filing deadline for Plan Commission is, I believe, July 2nd, whatever that Friday is. So any projects submitted on that deadline or any future deadlines would follow the new process.
Okay, and because the changes have not yet been made to the bylaws of the Planning Commission, that will have to be done before this takes into, before it goes into effect for use, right?
The Plan Commission rules of procedure affect how the Plan Commission operates during its meetings and the process. So those would be adopted either at the end of the next Plan Commission meeting or at the very beginning of the July meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would share with the council that I've been involved with these changes since the beginning. I had a chance to meet with Kevin and Pam on it. When we voted at the APC last week, everybody voted to approve this with the exception of me, and I abstained. And I abstained because I felt I wasn't it's not that I was uncomfortable with the changes, but I felt like I wasn't knowledgeable enough to vote last week. I have reviewed them since then. I'm more comfortable with what we're doing. They are significant changes to our process. And I'm always a little reluctant to change something unless I truly know that we are improving it. But based upon my conversations with the rest of the Planning Commission, particularly with those members that have been here for a long period of time on the APC, Cindy Spaljerik, Bob Horkey, Ginny Kelleher, I am much more comfortable now, and I would support these changes today. So just to clarify that. Councilors, any other questions regarding the changes? Can I then have a motion to approve the ordinance 22-19?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Motion made by Jake Gilbert, seconded by Troy Patton. Cindy, would you call the roll?
Yep, Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spaljerik,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Moving along then, the next item is ordinance 22-22. City Council of the City of Westfield approving a lease between the City of Westfield Building Corporation as lessor and the Westfield Redevelopment Commission as lessee, and pledging certain local income tax revenues to payment of lease rental on such lease. This item had a council introduction on May 23rd and is up for adoption consideration this evening. I believe that what it deals with is the ordinance deals with the Union Square garage, and I believe we've got Catherine Finello and Jim Treat on the line to explain the ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, I am on the line, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Jim's in the building.
Jim's here.
And there's Jim.
Would you like me to go first?
Yes, please.
All right, Catherine Finello, Public Finance Attorney with Dinsmore and Shoal, Indianapolis, serving as bond counsel for this bond issue or potential bond issue. As you stated, we discussed this ordinance at the last meeting, and the ordinance is approving the lease, the proposed lease between the City of Westfield Building Corporation and the Westfield Redevelopment Commission. The lease is proposed to be paid for from the tax increment revenues that are generated and collected in the Union Square allocation area. But as Jim Treat will explain, we are also requesting a local income tax pledge as a backup. And I believe Jim Treat can provide any additional explanation as to why that may be needed, but it totally relates to the bond sale itself and getting favorable bond purchase terms. I know that I probably need to go ahead and answer there was a comment by Councilman Patton and Councilman Fry, I believe, at last meeting, and I'm not sure if Mr. Hersig passed along any comments. But there was a question regarding the number of parking spaces for public versus private. And I believe there was a suggestion to include that in the lease. I would suggest, if that is the will of the council and the city, that any kind of requirement would be actually through the form of an amendment to the development agreement, since the developer, which is Union Square Plaza, is a party to the development agreement. Since the lease is only between the building corporation and the redevelopment commission, if there's, again, a desire to have a certain number of public parking spaces for that to be enforceable against all parties, I would suggest that the development agreement be amended. But would also look to Mr. Hersig if he has any comments on that. But happy to answer any additional questions.
No, summarize it well, Catherine. I think that in part addresses some of the concerns council raised last meeting, so nothing new. That was good. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. And at this time, it might be, if you would like for Jim Treat to reiterate again why the local income tax pledge is being sought for this bond issue.
Catherine, Jim's going to give us a quick update here.
Well, we did discuss that the last time.
You did.
And the reason is, as Catherine said, we're pledging the TIF from Old Town's projects to pay for this garage, or we hope the bulk of it. But we cannot market bonds on a revenue stream that doesn't exist yet. The apartments have not been built, the projects have not been built yet. So there's no credit worthiness to it. So we have to put an existing revenue stream, which is the lit. Same reason we've done with the Grand Park financings and that kind of thing. So that's really the reason. And when we look at that structure, we just need to make sure, we look at it two different ways. We look at it, what bonds have a lit pledge behind them, and make sure that we have sufficient coverage because right now we've got the two Grand Park bonds with lit pledge, and then ultimately, if we go forward with the financing as it's already approved for the Grand Junction Park, that would be a lit pledge as well. So we need to make sure that those, together with this pledge, are sufficiently supported by your lit. Again, just from a pledge standpoint, not from what we're going to pay it from. That's the distinction to make. So you have a total right now of about almost $17 million a year. 16.6, 16.7 is your lit revenue stream. So what I'm looking at right now is about 5.6 in existing lit pledge bonds, and that includes everything from Grand Junction Park. Okay, that is if we don't pay down anything and we do a whole $35 million bond with that one as well. So that's my point is there's more than sufficient coverage. If we add this deal to it of $900,000 to $1 million in lit back debt, you still have 2.5 times coverage. That's the way the bond market looks at it. That's what they're relying on to get repaid. Doesn't mean that's what you're going to use any lit to pay it, but that's what they're relying on to get paid. So that was the point I wanted to make on that. And I'll answer questions to clarify anything on that or explain anything that Catherine didn't touch on.
Any questions, councilors? Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
My question is not for you, Jim. Thank you. So who's going to put the parking spot assurances in the developer agreement, I guess, just to make sure that that's happening, Manny? So if it's not going to be in the ordinance and it's going to go into the Old Town Developer Agreement, who's doing that, just to make sure we know that that's getting done?
Yeah, Catherine can work on that aspect of it,
Yes.
and we can certainly help answer
Okay.
any questions.
Okay.
So will that come back before us? How do we?
Yes, yeah, Catherine can explain the process better, but it will come.
Yes, we would go ahead and put forth a resolution just approving an amendment to the development agreement.
Okay.
If you will, provide the specifics, if there is a specific number of public parking spaces you are requesting, just whatever specifics you have, we will go ahead and draw up an amendment to the agreement and have and put it in front of the council for approval.
Thank you, Catherine.
So should we ask? Do we need to do that? Catherine, do we need to
Yes.
provide you that number now, or
I,
when would you like that?
Well, we do have a little bit of time because you have the bond ordinance coming up here under new business for introduction. We would request approval at the next meeting on the bond ordinance. I could certainly have a draft of the amendment in front of you for that meeting. So I think it probably would be best if you could decide on that tonight, if you have a number in mind, or if that's something you need to come back with, that's fine. But would also look to Mr. Hersig regarding procedure that he is comfortable with. Appropriate.
It's also not a number you need to vote on. There's going to be some more complexities. Obviously, I'm very late to the game on the project, but Catherine has been. Good,
I
Justin's
think,
here. So
yeah,
there's-
Justin Moffitt is here.
If I
from
might
Old
jump
Town.
in here.
Thank you, Justin.
My sense is this is a redundant process. We've covered this territory quite a few times. The project agreement says that we provide 300 spaces in the garage structure in addition to the new surface parking we're building on street that's part of our development plan that's already been approved by the Plan Commission. It says that the private development side can only reserve 30% of the total spaces in the garage. The rest are publicly available at all times. And so we're putting extra layers on this that to us feel like they're unnecessary. Glad to do it because it doesn't harm anything, but it's just another resolution, another process, more public hearings to say the same thing I think we've already said. So the project agreement says we're going to deliver 300 parking spaces within the project, and we can only privately reserve 30% of them. And so we can say it a different way for you if it's helpful.
Justin, thank you. That's the number I remembered, but I didn't want to speak out of turn.
That's
so-
30% in the
Okay.
garage.
Yes, sir.
Not counting the surface.
Correct. The surface that we build are new on-street spaces adjacent to the development and in a surface parking lot. They're going to be publicly available. They're within the right-of-way.
So that's already in there.
Yes, sir.
Catherine, does
Yes,
it-
that is correct. 30% is already in there. If there is a different number required, we would need to amend. Sorry, thought we had discussed that at the last meeting.
Well, then, is there any need to amend anything then? I think we're in agreement. The number's already in there, right, Catherine?
That is correct. 30% is Justin
Couns-
just stated.
Counselors, any need to amend it? Nope. Hearing none, thank you. Do I have a motion then to approve ordinance 22-22?
Motion to approve 22-22.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Troy Patton, seconded by Scott Fry. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Jarek,
Did you say Cindy? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a yes on my vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Scott Fry.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. Justin Moffett, thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
All right. Next item on the agenda is ordinance 22-23, Common Council of the City of Westfield, Indiana, adopting the second-class city status. This had a council introduction on May 23rd. It is up for a public hearing this evening and up for adoption consideration on June 27th. Jeremy Lawler is on vacation this week, much needed one. And so Manny Herzog is going to, I think, introduce this.
Oh.
And then I
I've
think.
been voluntold. Okay.
And then I want to announce to everybody that in addition, we also have a special guest tonight, Becca McKeek, help me on this, McQuick, okay, who is the Chief Legal Consultant of AIM, the Accelerated Indiana Municipalities, and she's going to give us a quick presentation. And again, she's the legal counsel and going to try to do give us a high overview of it, a neutral view, hitting on some of the pros and cons of moving toward the second-class city. So with that, I would say, if it's okay with you, Manny, we should let Becca do a quick presentation.
I think that's fine. Yeah, that was going to be my intro. And thank you to Becca for coming. We asked AIM to help, like you said, give a neutral perspective, and Becca was gracious enough to help. I think she came from a clerk treasurer's presentation up north, so she's well-traveled today. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Becca. The floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, council members and mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And as stated, just hot off the road from Michigan City, Indiana, where was with all the clerk treasurers and all their educational experiences. So appreciate the opportunity. I'll try and move through this pretty quickly. And I apologize, the slides are wordy, but it's mostly because of the statutory authority, not because I wrote it. So I wanted to just give a little bit of introduction to what AIM is for those of you that don't know. Hopefully all of you are familiar with. AIM is Accelerate Indiana Municipalities, and we serve as the chief membership organization for Indiana cities and towns. We serve as the nonpartisan voice for municipal government, cover land use planning, municipal utilities, and we also have listservs so that members can participate, from councils to mayors to city managers to next week we'll be having the city attorneys seminar. So we're always excited to discuss different pieces of municipal government and happy to answer questions as they come through. So this is the section of the Indiana Code that talks about the change of status to a second-class city. You'll see in 3641 1.1, except as provided in subsection B, third class remains, but in section B, a legislative body of the city may, by ordinance, adopt the second-class city status. There is a case that I added in there because it does limit the legislation impacting certain municipalities simply based on population. The other code that you'll want to pay attention to is 36418, which talks about some of the membership of the legislative body and when the changes occur if there is a change to the class of the city. So second-class cities are 35,000 in population, up to 499. There is a little bit of a discrepancy in the way that the code is written, so I just put it up there. But when most of the conversations are happening, we go around the 499 number. Third-class city is typically less than 35,000. So except as provided below, a city that attains a population of 35 remains a second class, even though its population decreases to less than 35 at the next federal census. And then the legislative body of the city to which this applies may by ordinance adopt the third class city. So going into the operations, and again, I apologize if this is a little wordy, just kind of wanted to give you very factual information from the statute. So the government of a second and third class city is divided between the mayor and the common council. The mayor exercises the executive authority of the city and its day-to-day operations. The executive authority is often exercised through the Board of Public Works and Safety, Board of Works, city departments, and heads of those departments. The common council exercises the legislative authority in the second and third class city, make the laws that govern the city, and appropriate the city's money. The Common Council is both the legislative and fiscal body in both second and third class cities, so there's no changes there. Mayor in a second or third class city, the powers and duties include, among other statutory authority, and again, these are listed out in statute, so enforcing the ordinance of the city, providing a statement of the finances and general condition of the city to the Common Council at least once a year, ensuring efficient government of the city, filling vacancies of the city office, signing bonds, approving and vetoing ordinances, resolutions, and legislative body. And while I highlight the among other because that is part of the statutory authority, there are other elements to that, and I'm sure ongoing questions that come in. Departments of Finance and elected fiscal officials. So each second and third class city may create a Department of Finance. In a second class city, the Department of Finance is headed by a controller, and that's under Indiana Code 364105, who is appointed by the mayor. And then the legislative body can also authorize appointment of deputies, and the current position at the status of a third class city would remain the same until the next municipal election for both the clerk treasurer and the council members. So one thing to consider is whatever action is taken or not taken, if it is taken, it becomes effective, so in 2024. If it is not taken, you cannot take action or the positions wouldn't change until a full another election cycle. So you're not just waiting through that term, you're waiting through the other term. The third class elected clerk treasurer is the head of the Department of Finance and the keeper of the records. There is one piece that's not necessarily listed on this slide. The clerk treasurer position can be kept in a second class city. Typically, if that's done, it's done in a record keeping fashion. So the controller becomes the fiscal arm, the clerk treasurer becomes the record keeping arm. So both positions can remain if the move is done to a second class city. With a council, a second class city has 9 members, 6 elected from districts, 3 at large. There would be redistricting at the municipal election. Third class generally have 7 members, either 2 or 3 elected at large, and the remaining from the districts. Presiding officers is slightly different. So second class cities, the Common Council at its first meeting chooses among the members of president and vice president to serve in the president's absence. In third class city, the mayor presides over the council meetings. So that is something that structurally would need to be adopted if there was a transition to the second class city. City manager, this is something that's rather new. I believe up until 14 or 15, there was a difference as far as no applicability to the city manager position in third class cities. Now third class cities may create the position of city manager to serve over the administrative head of government. That's under 36412. And the ordinance creating that position must be initiated by the mayor and approved by the council. Second and third class cities are authorized to establish an executive department which they consider necessary for efficiency to perform administrative functions. And then the city legislative body may not employ a member of the legislative body as the city manager. So there's a 2-year period after leaving office that then a legislative body member could flip into that city manager position. So Board of Works and Public Safety, this is definitely one of the pieces that I think goes along with growth. With a second class city, the council may by ordinance establish a separate Board of Works and a Board of Public Safety. That's under 36495. The Board of Public Works and Safety may consist of either 3 or 5 members appointed by the mayor. If the council's enacted an ordinance providing for separate boards, then the Board of Works and the Board of Public Safety may each consist of 3 to 5 members. So deals with the coverage of the individuals that may be impacted by the growth of the municipality. Third class cities, the Board of Works and Safety consist of 3 to 5 members, and you're all probably familiar with that. That's under 36498. Department of Law and City Court in a second class, Corporation Counsel is the head of the department, third class city attorney, and then the city court can be established at the discretion of the council. These terms I put up there, they can be used interchangeably. A lot of times you hear corporation counsel and it's the city attorney, you hear city attorney, it's the corporation counsel. So they are specific, but they are used interchangeably. So you may have heard both of them. With reporting, you know, there are GASB reporting requirements with third class cities and second class cities. There's also different elements of what you're required to add to your GASB 4. And so as you consider whether you do or do not move to a second-class city, you'll want to work with your financial advisor. I believe that Baker Tilly may have already come in and presented. They might have already explained this piece of it. But they will have to make sure that they're meeting the reporting requirements in the classification. So there's some in second, there's some in third. It's no pro or con, it's just making sure that they're adjusting as accordingly. Another piece to think about is federal and state distributions and what is the basis for distributions and competitive grants. With distributions for federal grants, it typically runs on population, so there wouldn't be any impact if you switch from a second to a third-class city. And with state funds, it usually goes on population road miles, so there may not be any impact. With competitive grants, they do set out at times different reasons for why and who are applying. So you would just need to make sure, or as you consider whether it's a second or third class city, you may or may not be eligible for a grant that's put out federally or at the state level. Departments of Public Sanitation, a second class, have the ability to establish a Department of Public Sanitation, and that's under 36.925. Third class have a Department of Sanitation under 36.923. So the difference is that in the second class city, there's a board that controls the with a board of sanitary commissioners, and the district is created as a special taxing district. So you'd also want to work with financial advisors. There can be benefits, there can be different pieces that you just have to consider as to whether that's a benefit for your specific community based on the facts that are presented. So items to consider, I just pulled this. So I work frequently with Katie Springer at the Indiana State Public Library and also with Carol Rogers at IUPUI. Both are very educated in census data, and they're a great resource if you ever need anything to determine questions about what am I considering, what do we need to know about census data. They are a wealth of knowledge, and I'd definitely recommend contacting them if you have questions. I also work with them frequently, so hopefully could answer some of the same questions as well. But between 10 and 20, Westfield grew from just over 30 to 46,410 residents. It's the highest population growth in Hamilton County cities according to the 2020 census. The city's building department processed more than 1,800 building permits in 21, with 74% of those applications for residential projects according to the year-end report. It surpassed the population threshold for the second-class city, and it is the last third-class city in Hamilton County. Representation, again, we talked about this earlier, that second-class city has 6 district members and 3 at-large members for a total of 9 members. These are not all of the second-class cities, but just to give you a few examples: Carmel, Noblesville, Fishers, Anderson, Bloomington, Evansville, Fort Wayne, Gary Hammond, you can read them, but there's plenty other second-class cities that wanted to make sure that we just had a good context for what other cities are available that you may want to reach out to if you haven't already to determine the pros and cons of a second and third class city. Costs, again, it's a pros and cons that you have to weigh. In a second class city, you could incur additional expenses for the salaries of adding the council members and department head level controller. However, balancing that out with if you have a controller that has an extensive fiscal degree, they may save you and reduce professional consulting fees. You just have to weigh, maybe take a look at what your professional consulting fees are now and whether that salary limit. I did pull from our salary survey, and I think the last controller survey was at about 98 as an average, but that fluctuates in between. We do have we do a salary survey, so if you have questions about other positions, we can obviously provide that information as well. So economic development, site selectors and companies are looking to make investments happen fast. Elected clerk treasurers are not required to have a financial experience background. That's by statute, so I don't say that to disparage that position because, again, great clerk treasurers, we have very skilled clerk treasurers, and the controllers are also not required to have a financial background, but they can. So just something that I wanted to make sure that you all know as a factual statement. And then I did pull that the TIF districts manage over $100 million in budget within the city of Westfield from the last numbers that I pulled. So again, if approved, voters in 2023 would elect a city clerk, the additional council members, and move to a second-class city would take effect on January 1st of '24. And happy to answer any questions. Hopefully I flew through that quick enough that I don't keep you guys here too late.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. Any
I've got a
questions?
question, I've got a question, Becca.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
So, because I know we don't want to be here forever, but anywho, I'm going to ask a couple of these questions. So,
Yeah.
just kind of, can a second-class city, or can a third-class city hire a controller?
What, no, I mean,
Yes or no?
they have elected clerk, yeah, they have an elected clerk treasurer.
Can a third-class city hire a financial controller for the city to work with the clerk treasurer?
Not a controller by title,
Okay.
no.
Can a third-class city hire a financial advisor within the city to work with the clerk treasurer?
Within the city? Or a consultant, they can definitely hire to work with the clerk treasurer.
Well, I mean, you were saying that, we could reduce some of our expenses because we use people outside all of our consultants.
Sure.
Can we hire our own in-house currently to work with the clerk treasurer?
No, that's what I was saying. So you can, so the difference that I was trying to outline is if, as a pro and con, if you hire a controller, your controller and whoever their staff is may do all of the work. If you have a third-class city and you don't have that controller, you may utilize an outsized resource. They both may bottom out at the same amount. I'm not sure, but that is just something to consider.
Yeah, so essentially a third-class city is cheaper than a second-class city.
I can't say that. It would depend on salaries and everything else. So
Yeah,
I'm only here to present the
Is our
facts.
structure in Westfield cheaper than Fishers, Noblesville, and Carmel currently?
I
Yes
would
or
have-
no?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes, it's cheaper. It's a
I would have
rhetorical question. I'm just not trying to be a jerk about it, but I mean, I like the presentation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
And I can
it's not
definitely-
quite-
Remember, she's not advocating.
It's not.
Yeah,
quite-
I was gonna say, I
It's not quite neutral when you show a bunch of different things that say, oh, well, this can be your benefit if you go to a second-class city. Can be your, because we already have benefits being a third-class city.
Well, here,
Correct?
let me go back real quick, just so.
And Becca, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, although
No,
I
it's
know I
okay.
am.
I just want to make sure that I'm as I'm flying through, that I'm not sharing the information. So what I was saying, just to make sure, so a second-class city can incur additional expenses. So what I'm saying there is that can be a negative to moving to a second-class city because you could incur additional expenses from the salaries. But then to balance that out, what I was saying is if you stayed a third class, or if you moved to a second-class city and have in-house financial expertise, you could reduce professional consulting fees.
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to balance out, is saying, look, if you're a second class, you may get hit with a bunch of money in salaries, but on the other hand, if I'm advocating for both sides and saying you could save money because Baker Tilly could be doing, or any other financial advisor could be doing, I don't know how much work, because I did not
Right.
do,
I would be a terrible attorney, by the way. I'm just saying, I read the second one, I say, having an in-house financial expertise could reduce professional consulting fees. Well, geez, we could do that now to work with the clerk treasurer. We don't have to be a second-class city to actually save some money there. I mean, just, anyways. Okay, I'm done.
Counselors, any other questions for Becca? Becca, thank you very much for driving down tonight. I know you've got to turn around and drive back north, I understand.
Well, you know,
Michigan City,
it's going to be a nice drive. I've got some podcasts pulled up, so I'm good to go. There are municipal podcasts. I think there's one called For the Love of Gov. So if you ever want to just really get into city government and be that person, you can. So.
I'll share some advice with you. This is being streamed on YouTube, so if you want to pull that up and watch it again on your drive, feel free.
Well, I truly do appreciate the time, and I appreciate the importance of this consideration for this council. It's a huge decision, so I thank you for doing the diligence to take the time to really consider the statutory authority around it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. All right. Okay. That being the case, I think we will open the floor then to a public hearing. Kevin, do we have some cards?
Yep, we currently have 4 cards.
Okay, we'll open the floor then at 9:15. Okay, open.
Steve, and I apologize if I butcher this, Goodyear. Great.
Good evening, my name is Steve Goodyear. I live at 1393 Bridgeport Drive, right at the corner of Ditch in Westfield. I'm here in favor of becoming a second-class city just from one factor, and that is larger representation. I mean, which is what everything about government is representation and voting. And, you know, I pay taxes like everyone else, and if it means that it's going to cost us to pay 2 more representative council members, I'm absolutely fine with that. So that was my main purpose, make it short.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rick McKinney.
I think Rick has left the building.
Well, then Cheney Day.
Do I have to turn this on?
Sorry.
Awesome. Is that timer gonna run? Okay. 3 minutes. I've been practicing. Okay. Good evening. Cheney Day, live at 418 South Cherry Street. Been a Westfield resident most of my life. I graduated in 2011. Deeply rooted in the community, my ancestors moved here in 1835, making me a 7th generation Shamrock. Been following the council since 2020, but so long-time listener, first-time speaker. And I just wanted to post some points as you make this decision tonight. I think the fundamental question when considering this is, do we think that we have a deficient municipal structure, or do we think that we have deficient personnel? I lean towards personnel, but I don't believe that the clerk treasurer is deficient. Another thing that proponents of this change are making are the more voices, the better. By going from the arbitrary number of 7 to an arbitrary number of 9, we will have a more effective government. However, voice can be defined more broadly than the number of council members that are seated. Having a voice to elect key personnel that are overseeing the city's finances is a pretty important voice to have. If I view the clerk treasurer as deficient, I can vote her out. If we make this change, it's no longer the case, as that position overseeing our city's finances becomes an appointment. Second thing I've heard is we need a CFO to come in and run our growing $100 million business, also known as the City of Westfield. I completely reject this idea that our government should be run as a business. Government should focus on public safety, infrastructure, staying within our means. If you need an example as to why government should not venture into business, look no further than the Grand Park RFP. We are facing dark economic times, record inflation, debt levels that are not even comprehensible, and a recession that we'll have to be dealing with for the years to come. Let's just focus on the basics here: small government, public safety, infrastructure, and living within our means. And I want you to remember, how often when we the people give up a right, give up our voice to the government, do we ever get it back? Thank you.
Thank you.
The last card that I have, Joe Plankus.
Good evening, everyone. Joe Plankus, 514 Stockbridge in Westfield. A little over 20 years ago, our family moved to Westfield. Why? Our daughter and her family lived in Westfield, and I also had a change in jobs, which brought me back to Indianapolis area. That was a win-win for us as a family. We've watched Westfield grow from a town of about 5,000 residents, based on a 2000 census, to almost 50,000 residents. All that while earning a designation as one of the best places to live in the entire United States. That was achieved with the leadership of a visionary mayor, a strong city council supporting positive changes, and literally hundreds of residents
that have participated in updating the comprehensive land use plan, working on various committees such as the Grand Junction Task Group, Grand Park, Spring Mill Station, Downtown Westfield Association and Chamber of Commerce, as well as our Westfield service clubs such as the Rotary, Kiwanis, and Open Doors. There are many others, too numerous to name. The challenge now is for this council to continue that leadership task by considering and passing an ordinance to go from a Class 3 city to Class 2. 92% of the cities in Indiana that are eligible to be Class 2 city have taken that step, including all the cities in Hamilton County. So the argument is, why change? One of the arguments not to change to a Class 2 city is that it removes the checks and balances of an elected clerk treasurer. That is a totally weak argument. The city council controls the financial needs of the city. They participate in a budgeting process, periodic review of the budget versus actual results, with the ability to change the course if necessary. They have the responsibility of oversight and have established both a finance committee and an oversight committee to achieve that goal. They are the check and balance to the system. There are no financial training requirements to run for the office of clerk treasurer, while under IC Code 36496, there are very closely defined responsibilities for the appointment of the fiscal officer. With our tremendous growth as the fastest growing city in Indiana, it is way past time to take that next step to manage the financial affairs of the city. Under a Class 2 city, the mayor no longer is in charge of the city council meeting. President of the council runs the meeting. There are many other positive reasons for a Class 2 city status that has been covered by other residents. I'm sure you've also received emails. To not take this opportunity to pass this ordinance is a vote to keep Westfield the way it was 10 years ago. That's living in the past and not looking to the future. To be sure, let's move the city into the future. Please vote yes on this ordinance to go to a Class 2 city. Thank you.
Joe, thank you.
Judy Shuck.
Judy Stanley Shuck, 209 West Main Street, Westfield, Indiana. Becoming a second-class city. Before becoming a second-class city, we need to learn to be a city. We are young, and there are lessons to be learned still. Since becoming a city, there have been many red flags raised on how we run our city. We need to learn from our mistakes made. It has been said the government has to be run like a business. Well, that's true. But principles of running a business have been used. Yes, I mean, that's with anything. In the state of Indiana, city is run by Indiana codes, and most finances are practiced through fund accounting practices, oversight from State Board of Accounts. A business is only successful by respecting each role of the system and how it is managed. One change that will happen changing to a second-class city would be the role of the clerk treasurer, an elected position. The clerk treasurer is responsible for keeping all financial records and all records of meeting minutes, etc. The mayor is elected official to act as chief executive of the city, someone to look up to and respect to lead us into the future. The council represents their district and the people who live in those districts. We also have 2 at-large council members who represent all of the citizens. They provide the bridge between the community of citizens and government. They are to review and approve annual budgets, establish tax rates, enter into legal contracts, borrow funds, and pass ordinance and resolutions. We have 3 branches of government for the people. They have to work together to be successful for the people. The people we elect for these branches of government should have experience and knowledge of what their responsibilities are. Let's start with the first red flag, though. It brought to my attention, the first one was this sale of the utilities. The disbursement of the funds received were not taken care of properly or correctly. Next, look at Grand Park, its buildings and grounds. State Board of Accounts wrote us up again on the way we did our operations and so forth. So much lack of integrity. The mayor's office having their own financial department with employees without any government accounting background. They used a totally different accounting system and entered their own data. They can get all of any reports from the clerk treasurer's office. That's how business runs. The clerk treasurer's office always had great audits from the State Board of Accounts. Westfield has looked like...
That's time.
Thank you.
I'm going to finish, I'm sorry. Westfield has looked like a joke because of all the lawsuits, and oh, why is the city attorney resigned unexpectedly? Yes, the clerk treasurer had to countersue to defend her job. Okay, let me finish up.
Thank you.
Let me finish
thank you,
up.
Judy.
This could go on wrongs and rights. We have made mistakes. This is exactly why we need to learn to become a city first. Then maybe in the future, a second-class city. We will not be successful until we learn from our mistakes. And we have to respect our past to know our future.
Thank you.
The last card I have at the moment, Linda Nass.
Linda Nass, 1122 East 161st Street. I've heard some things and read some things that have been written. I am a CFO. So if that holds any credibility, it seems to some, but we do have some CPAs on our council, and we have many good people in this city. To start off with, and I think there was a lot of good background information tonight that the fire chief gave and the housing stock told us, but in 2000, our population was, and this is the numbers from the census, 9,293 people. I had lived here 7 years, but I wasn't in the city. Then we almost doubled our population because we annexed the whole southwest area of over 5,700 acres and a whole bunch of people. Then we annexed along 32, north and south sides, and we annexed along 31. So we grew, but those were people that are already there. It was Village Farms, it was Centennial, it was Merrimack. They already had water and sewer with Hamilton Utilities. Then we buy the utilities, and then we become a city in 2008. But in this annexation, we were promised a whole lot of things that didn't come. We were promised representation, didn't happen. We were promised that any zoning would have to have 50 people in favor. It didn't happen. But let me tell you some of the other Hamilton County cities around us, because I lived in Carmel for a while. We're never going to have more than 9 representatives. So if you're talking about representation, no matter how big we get, 9's the limit, okay? We have 7. We can never be a first-class city. Fishers was a town until 2015 when they became a second-class city. They didn't go the third-class route because they already had 80,000 people, bigger than us. But back in 2000, when we had 9,200, Carmel and Fishers were already 4 times larger than us. In 2010, when we grew to 30,000, Fishers and Carmel were already 2.5 times as big as us, with nearly 80,000 residents. In 2020, Fishers and Carmel are still over 2 times larger than us. We want to run with the big boys, you know, but if you're going to jump off the porch and run with the big dogs, you better know what you're doing. We have had a reputable clerk treasurer's office. We have had audits every year. I have read every single one of them. If you haven't, I suggest you do, because we've been dinged many times on things that our administration has done. It's all on the record. Okay, and right now there's over 730 cities and towns in Indiana, 730, over that. Only 24 are eligible for second class, and only 21 of them have chosen that. And that's less than 3%. So everyone else is operating fine. Okay. I have plenty of data sources, and I'll share those with you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Linda. Kevin, any other cards? All right, it's 9:30, and we'll, oh, we have one more card.
Apologize for not getting that up here sooner. My name's Ron Moore. I live in 15868 Viking Commander Way in Westfield, Indiana. And I thank you for your service tonight, and I thank you for your consideration on this very, very hard decision that you guys have to make. I appreciate every one of you and all the service that we've been given since we became a Class 3 city. Tonight, we've heard a lot of good information that's kind of anecdotal, tells us the history, but it doesn't talk about our future. I haven't heard anybody talk about what we want to be and where we want to be in the future. All of the Class 3 cities in Hamilton County are recruiting businesses that pay 3% after they get through with whatever tax abatements they negotiate. That kind of tax base is what we're going to need in order to provide what the fire department just told you they need earlier tonight. It's the kind of thing, decision that we have to make that puts professionals in the right place. Now, as far as oversight is concerned, I think the city council is very capable of putting all of the oversight in position to be able to take care of and be successful with operating the city. I think the mayor can, whoever the mayor is, can run the city and provide some excellent, going forward, excellent kind of leadership that would come through a professional CFO, if you want to call him that. I think you've got a lot to consider. I just wanted to remind you, think about our future, not where we've been, but where we're going. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ron.
Hi, I'm Sharon Williams. I've been here before. I was born on I've been here 83 years on State Road 32. So I've seen a lot of hardworking men, and I didn't appreciate them quite as much until I lived right next door to the building of the Crew Car Wash and the Burger King on a floodplain. Now, you guys voted on that, to build on a floodplain. Now, I can show you some pictures that I've got that makes you realize that this really is a floodplain. Now, some of these city managers all over the country, not just here in Westfield, have really abused this idea of building on a floodplain because, one, because of the hurricane that came in Texas, Houston, Texas, it put a lot of people out of homes. FEMA is spending a lot of money because of the city permits, not just this city, but every city. Okay, the thing of it is most of the time when I think about a city, the first thing I think about, which is rather dumb, I know, but I do, because in Noblesville in January 2020, there was an explosion of the city sewers, which, guess what, it exploded? All of the residue every time you flush your stool, okay? So it damaged a lot of new builded homes. So apparently the city of Noblesville wasn't doing a cotton picking thing, or that wouldn't have happened. I don't know how much money that the city spend on their sewage, but somebody's getting contracts and they're being paid too darn much for a job that's not done well. I'm getting tired of spending federal money that the cities have mismanaged. And that's about all I've got to say on that. I'll be back in just a minute.
Thank you, thank you. Kevin, any more cards? Okay. We got, okay, one card, this is the last card? Last card. Maybe. Hopefully.
Bob Beaudry. I live at 115 West Clear Lake Court in Westfield. You all know me, of course. I wasn't going to speak, but I felt compelled to because I had a couple points I wanted to make. First one is 11%. That is the amount of registered voters that participated in the last election. That's a very small number of registered voters. We also, I believe, had 2 of the districts run unopposed. So the notion that more representation is better, I think, dilutes that idea, because it's not like we have 4 or 5 candidates, quality candidates vying for each spot. We don't. And then a lot of times we have problems finding people that want to run because it's a thankless job. And I thank all of you and all the past people that have run for elected office. But to say that more representation is better, more is not always better. More is just more. Quality is where it counts. And I think that's where we're at right now. We have quality. I sat here and I've listened to all the things going on between one department and the other, and the distrust and what's going on. We need to get our house in order and get everybody working together before we start expanding and thinking about where the future's leading us, because we're not doing very good in the present, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm speaking as a resident and a taxpayer. Our TIFs are, from my perspective, out of control, and I sit on the RDC. We've got $13.4 basically $1 million sitting there, committed maybe, not. I asked some questions today. I guess there's sustainability and there's strategies. We haven't seen the strategies really. Hopefully we will. But in my opinion, yes, in the future, I think there is opportunities for us to grow and to move into a second-class city. I don't think the time is right now. I think we have a lot of work to do. And I think there's a lot of people committed to making that work in every department, in every facet, every office. But I think that's where we need to go first before we move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, it's 7:35, 9:35. Wish it was 7:35. We're going to close the public hearing. Counselors, any comments tonight, or should we just, we're going to have this up for adoption consideration at our next meeting on the 27th? Anyone want to make any comments prior to that? Okay, thank you. Thank everyone who spoke this evening. Moving on to our next item, Ordinance 22-24, vacation of right-of-way within Style Meadow. Had a council introduction on May 23rd. We're up for a public hearing this evening and then also for adoption consideration this evening. And John Nail, our new Director of Public Works, is going to fill us in with an introduction here.
For the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works, City of Westfield. As introduced, this is a right-of-way vacation near the Chatham Hills area, just on the east side of Tomlinson. Do you have the exhibit from last? The exhibit. It's okay. It's fine. It's on the east side of Tomlinson, across from Chatham Hills Boulevard, and there was an exhibit presented at the previous introduction. Essentially, what we have is a right-of-way section that was platted as part of an old county subdivision that never got constructed. That right-of-way is obsolete now for the Hinkie Development Chatham Village plan. And as owner, the Hinkie Development entity owns the surrounding land. And they had petitioned us for a vacation of right-of-way so that they could record their secondary plat and move forward with the Chatham Villages project. So tonight, it was introduced at the last council. Tonight's public hearing, and then we'd ask for a vote for adoption of that vacation of right-of-way. Manny, is there anything I missed that you want to touch on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nope, you covered it.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing now at 9:37.
We have one card. Sharon Williams.
Yep. Hi, I'm Sharon Williams again. I didn't even read the newspaper because most of the time all of this stuff's in such fine print. I didn't read it, but I started reading it, and I didn't become involved until they did an eminent domain of my home. Then they did a quick claim. The treasurer of Hamilton County sent me 2 measly little checks so she could grab on to my property. And then the DNR sent me a threatening letter and said that I needed to write him and say whether I agreed with his statements or not, and I had 18 days to answer. Well, at that time, I only had 14. Okay, so I sent the answer to him, certified mail. I also sent the answer to the United States Department of Justice Consumer Protection Agency in the Washington, D.C., because what they were trying to do was steal my property. And now they wanted to steal my property because they wanted to tell me what to do and where to go. Okay, now that's fine and dandy if I'm doing something wrong, but I've been living there since 1965. Now, I don't consider I'll live there forever, but could be. My grandparents lived till 92. But what really irritated me was the theft. How can you go around and decide to make, because in that last theft problem they did, which was on the, I can't think of the creek's name, Cool Creek, there's a lift station for the poop station, okay. So everybody that's been built there flushes their poop there, and then it goes on down the drain to the Carmel, okay, where it overflowed on the well. The people come up there and get their well water and get hepatitis and whatever other disease they got from the overflow of the poop, okay? So my particular focus has been on the poop, because all of this building and whatever it is, you have to be able to flush your stool and take a shower at night, okay? But we're not going to be able to do that because we're going to be using too much water, and there won't be any water because we won't be able to drill a well deep enough to even have any water. Now, I don't think anybody's even thinking that far ahead. The builders and the developers are thinking for right now because they want to make a dollar bill. Now, that's fine with me, but I don't need a dollar bill. I don't need a heck of a lot of money because I don't require a lot of money. My husband put me on we had a financial discussion when I was 20 years old, and apparently I had never written checks before, but I was writing too many checks. Okay, so he said, he hurt my feelings. This is funny, you'll like it. He hurt my feelings, and so I said,
Sharon, thank you. That's time. Thank you.
But I am against you building all this crap, and I'm against the, the vacating of the property. The vacating of the property is stealing the property also. You're just trying to do it another way. I don't agree with that. So if you vote on that, you're voting to steal property. Vacate means you're going to let loose and let the city manage your life.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, we're going to close the public meeting at 9:42. Councilors, any questions? Can I have a motion then?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 22-24.
Do you have a second? Motion made by Scott Willis,
Second.
seconded by Jake Gilbert. Cindy, would you call the roll, please? Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeri,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, moving now into new business for this evening. Ordinance 22-25, updating the traffic ordinance. It has a council introduction this evening. John Nail is, I guess, going to give us her introduction.
Should have stayed up here. For the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works, City of Westfield. We do an annual update to our traffic ordinance. Traffic ordinance is what allows our police department to enforce regulations on our streets. As development occurs in Westfield, we add continuously public streets via residential neighborhoods that are constructed. And stop signs, speed limits, et cetera, within those neighborhoods need to be added to the ordinance in a regular fashion so that our police department can enforce those rules of the road. Conveniently, there's just a cover sheet so that you don't have to flip through the entire, all the exhibits within this ordinance. It's 106 pages or something like that. So we try to simplify it and just do a cover sheet to explain what the changes are. And Kevin, I sent you an exhibit on that. I have a flash drive as well. Yes, it is. That's fine. That's okay. And ordinance 22-25. Yep. So yeah, so in front of you is the cover sheet. It just highlights the changes that have occurred since the last update. I'm not going to read them all, but new subdivisions that I referenced, new public streets that we have taken ownership of, those have gotten added. There was an additional no parking area on Park Street between Parkway Circle and Mill Street. There was a 20-minute limited parking restriction area on Park Street. And I can touch on that. That was a request from the restaurants on Park Street to help facilitate some of their users to come in, pick up food, and carry it out more quickly. And then stop control changes. We did add a four-way stop in Andover, which was a request from the neighborhood against cut-through traffic, as well as add a stop sign, four-way stop in Maple Village. And then Tomlinson Road, Cox Avenue, and 203rd Street was converted from a one-way stop to a three-way stop. And then lastly, two speed limit changes, reducing the speed on Union Street between 161st and Valley Farms Drive from 40 to 30, and a reduction on 191st Street from East Street to Moontown from 50 to 45 based on a county speed study. The county, Hamilton County Highway owns portions of 191st Street. We own the other portions. We wanted to coordinate and make sure our speed limit was consistent. So with that, I'd take any questions you may have on those changes.
Any questions, councilors? Jonathan, thank you. We will we'll read through everything here, and we'll look forward to adoption considerations the next meeting.
Very good.
Appreciate good insight. Next item, ordinance 22-26, authorizing the city of Westfield, Indiana to issue certain economic development lease rental revenue bonds and authorizing and approving other actions in conjunction therewith. Council introduction this evening, and then we'll be up for adoption consideration in 2 weeks. And I think we've got Catherine Finello is going to introduce the ordinance to us this evening.
Yes, good evening. The ordinance, again, as you stated, is for the issuance of the bonds related to the Union Square Garage project. The financial maximums that have been put in the bond ordinance were provided by Jim Treat. Jim Treat has reviewed the bond ordinance. You also have been presented with a form of loan agreement and trust indenture, which is required to be presented to you under the statute for review. Those documents are completed at the time of the sale and closing of the bonds with all of the purchase information. You will also note notice in the bond ordinance that there is a section on repealing the ordinance that was adopted in 2019. If you remember, I think it was late 2019, that ordinance was adopted for the original Union Square project. Since the project has changed, that ordinance is no longer valid, and therefore we also seek to repeal that ordinance in this bond ordinance. Happy to answer any additional questions you may have. This will, once this ordinance is adopted, this will complete the council procedural requirements for the issuance of the bonds. Next Monday, the Redevelopment Commission does have scheduled a public hearing on the lease, and that will be the last Redevelopment Commission meeting with respect to the project as well.
Thank you, Catherine. Councilors, any questions this evening? Hearing none then. Catherine, thank you. We'll review this. I'm sure we'll all look through the bond in detail here, through the information, the loan agreement, and be prepared to put it up for adoption consideration on the 27th.
All right, thank you.
Our next item on this evening's agenda is ordinance 22-28, Midtown of Westfield PUD Amendment 1. And Pam Howard, was going to be Dan Crabtree, but I think Pam Howard is going to introduce this ordinance.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Pam Howard from Community Development this evening. Before you, we have an amendment to the Midtown PUD District for property located on the east side of US 31 and north of 191st Street. The proposed amendment would modify the development and architectural standards for future development of a medical pavilion. The public hearing for this item is scheduled for the July 5th Plan Commission meeting, and it is here for your introduction this evening. I do have Matt Skelton with Churchill and Antrim here to present on behalf of the petitioners. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Good evening, members of the council. For the record, Matt Skelton with Churchill and Antrim with offices at 116 North Union Street here in Westfield. With me this evening from Alderson is Tony Alderson, the owner. We are excited to be able to present to you this evening a proposal that would permit a comprehensive medical campus to be built within the Midtown at Westfield PUD. I think Pam, at a very high level, did a good job at summarizing, and I know you've been here for a very long time, so I will just cut right to the chase. The use that is being proposed is a permitted use today in the PUD ordinance. The reason we are here, we have some architecture. Do you want me to, can you, yeah, if you can just spool through those, that's fine. Our architect has designed a state-of-the-art Class A medical office campus, and the standards that are put forth in the PUD ordinance would accommodate this exact project. What you're looking at is exactly what will be constructed. Alderson intends to begin construction of the medical campus as soon as it obtains its required approvals that they expect sometime later this year. The project would start. As you may notice from the PUD ordinance, there's some placeholder areas for signage package and a lighting package that is being finalized right now. And we're not exactly sure how that's going to fit into the PUD standards that otherwise would apply here, but we will be addressing that here yet this week. The staff, I think we have to have information into the staff by the 20th in order to make the next Plan Commission meeting. So we're excited about this project and would entertain any questions that you may have. Thank you.
So what is the change, Matt, the amendment? Is
I can go through that.
Materials?
Sure, yeah, so one of them, could you put up the concept plan? Really the main reason, if you could scroll down a little bit, I can't get it to work. The second building to the south, that's the main building. It's about a 96,000 square foot building. That is a 4-story building. The PUD has a minimum height requirement of 4 stories along 31. The companion building that will be located to the south that's connected by a breezeway is a 2-story. It's same Class A architecture and connectivity. It's just 2-story instead of 4-story. So that's number one. There's also our building architecture. Arguably, it's pretty consistent with the thematic imagery that's included in the PUD district, but the standards that apply have a different ratio of building materials, and our building materials just aren't the same. So we're using aluminum panels, masonry, and glass. And then I already talked about signage and lighting. To be continued. That's basically it, yeah.
I've got a question, if
Sure.
I may.
Yeah.
So I understand it's a medical facility. Is it, help me understand that. Kind of go down that path with me a little bit. Is it, I know we've approved Ortho Indy, and we kind of know what we're expecting there. How is this? Is this a group of physicians? What are we opening up to here?
It's much more than that. The community health has described this. It's a comprehensive medical campus. And this is not a definitive list of the services that will be provided here, but it will include primary care, behavioral health, women's health, integrated health, or integrated medicine, physical therapy, and imaging services. And there will be other things too, but it's a large facility. It's 96,000 square feet. I think the companion building is in the neighborhood of 36.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Any kind of questions, Counselor? Thank you, Matt, and we look forward to hearing this at the APC.
Great to see you there. Thanks.
Appreciate it. All right. Next introduction this evening, ordinance 22-29, Wood Robinson's Briggs PUD Amendment 2 has council introduction this evening. And I think Weston Roberts is going to handle the introduction.
Good evening. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item being introduced before you tonight is an amendment to the Woods Robinson Briggs PUD. In summary, the proposed PUD amendment proposes to add roughly 4.5 acres of additional real estate to the PUD, outlined in orange. Also modifying the general regulations of the proposed District 1 water feature, modifying the proposed park/trailhead district standards, and lastly, replacing the district map and the concept plan with an updated/revised documents. This petition is scheduled to be heard at the July 5th Advisory Plan Commission meeting. The petitioner is here tonight to present details of the project. They are available to answer questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Weston.
I'll be briefer than Matt. Really, when you look at this, there's two things. The Morris family, and Joe Morris was going to be here to present. They're asking for some language change in the PUD section 8.2. You can see that as you read it. But what they want to create is a more nature-based park up here with Indiana native shrubs, trees, and so forth. And they've engaged a pretty sharp engineer. What you see there is kind of the grading plan and the tree plan, and what you see is a kind of a unique trailhead with parking right there to the north of the pond that I have to build. And then we're going to use crushed stone, similar to Cool Creek. And then they would like to close, if you go to the exhibit architecturally, that'll, on the, yep, I get it. I kept seeing it up there all day. Yeah. It kept appearing. So what they're interested in doing is, yes, that's your restroom building. It's kind of sketched out. It's kind of similar to what we do along the Monon, throughout the Monon, that they like to build. So I committed to run the sanitary and water over there. I think there's a couple other exhibits with the shelter. That's just a sketch of the bathrooms. But so what they're proposing, when you look at the PUD, is to create more of a nature-based park versus what you consider like a developer park with a bunch of playground equipment. They'd have fitness-type equipment, interactive equipment like that, but it'd be more focused on, and that would be the outdoor shelter along the trailhead. So those are the changes. The Morris family, under my agreement with them, I have to build it, but they have their own right for the plan, so they wanted to modify the PUD to that effect. Go to the Girth property. That location map will work. So you'll see to the east of road cut number 1, and what you're seeing there, those road cuts are what David Weekly and I have worked on, and you'll see their actual approved plating plan up above. It's not been approved plating, but that's what they had through in their amendment. But you'll see just right of the existing church in the concept plan, if you can move the cursor over. Yeah, that's the Girth, no, to the right of it. That's the Girth property. It's 4.5. It came available, you know, I chose to purchase it because I want to promote commercial and kind of block any housing to go in and kind of work all the way to that corner as Mr. Patton mentioned, traffic up there has been kind of interesting. But I will tell you, with what we're doing, we're adding the entire third lane now, north. And if you've been out there, you see the trees have been removed. So we got through the bat period of time, March 31st. But once the construction drawings are approved, you'll see road cuts 1 and 2 go in. And I believe we're going to see that design for that roundabout taken into account. So what we're asking is that 4.5 acres and just add it to the general business. So that's the change to the PUD. The water feature, if you go to the center, I'm not changing the fact that we're having a water feature there. We just got a lot smarter about it. I hired a Long Island, New York fountain designer, engineer, and what we're going to create there is a 400-foot-long waterfall effect right down the middle of Grand Park Boulevard, which will create a very unique lit feature during the evening hours. But you can see that in effect there in a couple of New York parks. But the reason we did it is, one, I'm actually increasing the amount of water feature to almost 8,000 square feet from the 2,000 I had in there. But one, Citizens Utilities made it very cost prohibitive to put in our utilities up through the middle of Grand Park Boulevard with that big round feature, which was actually at the back of the property, which kind of didn't even create any attraction to the property. So that was an economic reason. Two, this becomes a more effective boulevard coming off of Grand Park Boulevard. Three, if anybody's been to Grand Park, you understand the wind factor out there. So instead of shooting water straight up in the air and having it blow 200 feet, I took a guy from Long Island to tell him you're not very smart about it. So we're going to create, we got a 20-foot medium there. And so I think, we've improved the project. I think you're going to see some good movement this year on it. We believe our plans will be ready for submittal in July, and hopefully we can get in cuts 1 and 2 this year, but definitely the utilities. So the progress is moving there, and so I'm here to answer any questions, but I'm sure as we go through the process, we've been through it before together, there'll be the give and take. So is there anything tonight I can help you with? But I will say these council meetings are interesting. You got a lot of important subjects, so thank you for serving.
Thank you, Bert. Thanks, Bert. Look forward to seeing you at the APC. All right. Now, we're now come to the point of the agenda where the floor is open to any guests who would like to address the council this evening.
Yep, I do actually have a card.
We have a card.
Sharon and Paul Hetty.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. I would like to tell you that we just moved to Indiana from Michigan. Been there all my life, pastored 3 churches. I worked with the Detroit Police Department. Got married, and we have a grandson who lives down here in Westfield, and that's why we moved. And I have a question and a complaint, and I'll let my wife talk about the complaint. She's very good at that.
That's how we do it at my house, so.
My question is, in Michigan, we've heard a lot about that Indianapolis Speedway. We moved on South Ridge and Union Street, right on the corner. I did not know that racetrack came down through Union Street, but it does. And usually, it's huge trucks that are building that roundabout that only Indiana has, those things. And we've just come here, I don't know who else to ask. the speed limit says 20 miles an hour.
Well, it's 30.
30
and
miles
then
an hour.
20.
And then 20. Maybe it should be 10 and 5, and maybe somebody would pay attention. I'm done.
That's why we are here. Maybe we're not talking to the right group of people about it, but we are concerned because people are not following the speed limit going down through there a lot.
Residential?
It goes, at our house, it's 30, and then right there at 171, it drops to 20 because of that new park and the school, and that's our concern. There are a lot of children in that neighborhood, and especially now that that park is right there, the playground area for the park is right against Union Street. And boy, it's a great dog walking place. Tons of people walk their dogs up and down along with kids on their bikes. Kids in
Two churches there.
kids in the morning are waiting on the buses for school and getting off at night. And it's just, it's come to our attention because we live right on the corner that the speed limit, something needs to change
And they
there.
can't even open the windows.
Hey, Joel, raise your hand. Joel, in the back. See the guy raising his hand?
Yeah, the Department of
I'm
Public
putting him right on the
Works.
spot. Go talk to that guy.
Yeah, so,
And if I
anyway.
tried to get across the street,
You can buy me one
I'd
later.
be dead meat. You know, I couldn't.
So anyway, thank you for listening. So what should we do? Should we go to,
Been heard.
You've been
Okay.
heard.
You
Yeah.
have been heard.
Yeah,
All right.
right there. Yeah.
Let me say, welcome to Westfield. Thank you for your
Okay.
comments.
Yeah,
Welcome to
thank you.
Westfield.
thank you. Thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you for waiting this evening.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right. Clerk Treasurer's comments.
Your husband's leaving. Let her go, Judy.
I do have a
Okay.
few comments.
Cindy Gasser?
I do have a few comments. First of all, just real quick, I know with some of the people out there that's been complaining about clerk treasurer, nobody's bothered to ask, but I have probably over 800 hours at Ball State to get all my certifications, and so does my staff. They have 2, I have 5, they have 2. So I just wanted to clear that up. And then people were talking about a CFO. I have the current from Zionsville and a letter that the CFO from Zionsville was let go, and they moved to a CFO, their town, and Zionsville transitioned to OpenGov, and the council in Zionsville complained when they switched. They only received reporting 3 times in 18 months. Information was incomplete, inconsistent, and inaccurate. If we don't have a clerk treasurer, I think a very similar thing would happen here in Westfield. It doesn't have to be me, I'm just saying, this city is not ready for a second class. And then I have, and because I want to let the council know, we have emails here. It started with Todd, went to Jeremy, then John Rogers, and we've been going back and forth. And here's another example. We have some property that and these emails are saying, don't pay right now, don't pay right now, because they had to be approved by, I believe, RDA. And just so you know, I'm gonna have to go ahead and pay this property tax, because if not, and we can't get a response from anybody, that piece of property will go to a tax sale. So just wanted to let you know. And so if you have any questions, let me know. That's about it.
We're done.
Done.
No, ma'am, the comment period is concluded for tonight, but the next meeting's the 27th.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but you have to wait till the next meeting, June 27th.
There's also a call-in option available, ma'am. There's also a call-in option available.
You please be generous.
It's up to Mr. Johns.
What I wanted to know was about the city contracts. I would like a complete printout for the last 5 years of who has been getting the jobs and the permits to do whatever they want to
Cheryl,
be permitted to do.
if you send me a letter, I will be happy to share it with the appropriate people.
Okay, you
Please-
write your
please do.
address back here.
Okay, pardon?
Write your address back there.
Okay, I'll be happy to. If you want to wait till after the meeting's over, I'll give you my address. Councilor comments, and let's start with Cindy Spoljarek. Are you here? Cindy?
I am. Would you like the reports from APC and ARPA?
That would be wonderful, yes, thank you.
Okay, APC met June 6th. We had 5 items on the consent agenda. The Lantern Commons Overall Development Plan, TWG, the Grand Park Village Multifamily Project, New Pro Campus Project 3, which is a 34,000 square foot commercial building, Teachers Credit Union and the Spring Mill Center PUD on State Road 32, the Community Bible Church expansion. So those items were on consent. And then we recommended approval for the 2 items that we heard tonight, the Chatham Hills PUD amendment and the UDO amendment. And then we held public hearings for 2 development plans, Midtown at Westfield and Springwater. And then public hearings for 2 PUDs, the Town Road Crossing PUD amendment, which is the equestrian project, and the Andover PUD amendment for parcel 1, which is that daycare we talked about on Grassy Branch. And then ARPA met on June 3rd, and let me find this. We got our the rubric information back from the reviewers that we had reviewing the nonprofit applications. So they finished that May 31st, and then we met the June 3rd to look at those rubric scores and discuss them. We were hoping to have a funding recommendation, but some people wanted to see the further review of the budgets for each of these nonprofits and some of the other pertinent information. So we decided we would look at that information further. We scheduled our next meeting for this Thursday, 2 o'clock, City Hall. And we hope to approve the funding recommendation at that time. We should be getting our second ARPA disbursement from Treasury any day. Nisha tells me that she thought we'd already have it, and we don't, but hopefully soon. And then we'll have to do the for the resolutions program update and appropriation for that money when we do get it. So hopefully that'll be at the next meeting or the following. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy. Councilors, any other committee reports at all? Jake?
Not a formal request here, but just sharing with the mayor and the clerk treasurer. Today, we received, I think it was from Misha, a report kind of on the budgets and actuals and percentages and so forth and so on. So being June, just to, hey, the best solutions of prevention is to hit off any down the road arguments about money spent on consultants and so forth and so on budgeting, any information to work together if we know we're going to go over, if we know we're on track, if we know we need to dial back, just that if that report could be shared with the administration, if the administration has any comments for us, just open communication between where we are. I have not looked at every line on that for sure, but I just know the council talked specifically about attorneys and consultants way back. Just think that would be good to work through that if we're going to come in differently than what we had talked about, that's all.
Any comments?
Only other comment that I would add, and I don't know whose umbrella this falls under, we might check and make sure that we've got the appropriately sized HVAC system in here before the next meeting. Other than that, I'm done.
I don't have a lot to add tonight, other than we talked a lot tonight about growth of the city and moving forward, and also our finances. And if there's anything that keeps me up at night, it's thinking about how are we going to finance our growth moving forward, and what are the best things. And I'm just looking forward to having some more discussions about that in the next couple months here, and just kind of trying to put together a plan that will sustain our growth. So those are my only comments. Mr. Mayor? Thank you. Well, then we will close this evening's meeting. Thank you all for attending.